And I had been used to being under so much stress for so long that when I would relax, my nervous system was freaking out. And I started getting shakes, and I started having these physical reactions where I couldn't control what was going on with my body. And that was the first tell that, like, oh, I may have a real problem here. I have something going on that I don't understand. But then I would wake up and I would read what I wrote. And it's dark, like really dark. And I was so embarrassed of that I had burned most of what I wrote. I never did keep it. I would throw it away. I would destroy it. I was so afraid that someone would see this in me and that someone would know that I was this person. And so one of the things that my wife would tell me for many years is she goes, you said you were going to be my partner. I need a partner. She goes, I don't feel like I have a partner. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking? I go to work, I pay the bills, like I do dishes every now and then, I help you around the house, I do all this stuff. And then again, just in that statement, I help you around the house. What? This is my house too. Who the hell am I helping? This is my job. These are my responsibilities. This is my home. I should be an adult.
As you can probably tell, I'm having a moment.
Yeah, it's a lot, I know. Once you realize the amount of pain that this causes on the other side, it's hard to look past.
Just as the why this conversation started.
You got me crying, man.
Because honestly, it's like you know when you where is this going, Jesus? When you kind of wait somewhere all your life for people to realize this, and then you're sat here in front of me and sharing all this, and it's like, oh my God. I think the amount of validation that just came out of that. Three and a half hours later, and it's gone dark outside. We started recording this when it was light outside. It's currently 10 p.m. in the evening. This has been one of the most in-depth conversations that I have had so far in my life. This is the type of conversation that I would go to and listen to in other people's podcasts that are very well known and versed into what they do. I don't even know what planet I'm on at the moment. I have been asking for more people that I can have conversations like this with in my everyday life. I didn't think it was going to come in the form of a guest on a podcast. Yet I believe that this person is not going to be just a guest on my podcast. It's going to be a new person in my life that I'm going to continue on a journey with from now on. Here is a conversation about what the heck did we speak about? We spoke about everything and anything under the sun. From being in the military to PTSD to going through healing those parts, through addictions, through weed and alcohol and other rabbit holes that I did not see this going down. I absolutely adore doing these and not knowing where they're going to go. So here's a conversation with the burning bear. By the way, there's going to be an explanation why that name in there too.
This would be early. This is usually my early hours. I don't usually typically start my day until after 11 to 1. So that's a pretty
That's why you
comfortable
asked.
start.
That's why you asked if we could do a bit 11, 12. Yeah, I see. So what time do you go to sleep then?
It depends. Last night about 3 a.m. So
Jesus.
yeah.
I wonder what keeps a man awake for such hours. What do you do? What do you do in the night? If I'm not too curious, if it's something that you can share, if it's porky, keep it to yourself.
I spend time with my wife, and we
Yeah.
hang out and we have a good time. You know, we're both middle aged, and I'm kind of semi retired as of like 2 years ago. So We live life like a bunch of teenagers in a lot of ways,
Oh,
and
I
but
love that.
yeah, so you have to learn to fall back in love with life.
Oh, I love that. Oh my God. Can we get straight into that part? How did you get to this? Well, okay, middle aged, you said semi retired. Go on, share a little bit about your path, like who you
Yeah.
are and what you do in the world a little bit, but maybe start with I don't know, growing up and your roots and where you belong in this world.
Oh man, that is a long story, but yeah, we can get into that. I researched your podcast a little bit, and so I've watched some of your clips, especially on Facebook.
Ooh.
So, my story is my story is interesting and not all that interesting, which I think a lot of people could probably relate to. But I grew up. I was born and raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and grew up in what would typically be a normal Midwestern middle class household. Like there was really nothing remarkable about my upbringing that you would define as bad. In fact, I was raised in more of like an upper middle class style family. So we had money. I grew up very spoiled and entitled in a lot of ways. But I had a trauma that occurred in my younger years. I was sexually molested by a family member,
Hmm.
and that had made a huge impact in my life, but different than you hear with a lot of people. I wasn't aware of it because this event had occurred, and then my parents had addressed this more through embarrassment than anything else. It was like, instead of like, oh, we're going to deal with this, it was like, well, how do we not talk about this? Like, how do
Hmm.
we put this away? How does this not become a conversation in the family? How do we not address it? It was by a male family member, and so my parents were both very Christian, and they were super worried that I was going to be gay because,
Mm-hmm.
I had this sexual experience and I was going to burn in hell and all this. So they sent me to this Christian psychologist, and this whole event kind of occurred. Now, I'm telling you it this way because this is kind of an after the fact reflection. In the moment, as a child, I didn't process any of this way.
Of
In fact, I
course.
grew up most of my life thinking there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. It was just like this was just normal. And I make it up to my teenage years. This is really something that doesn't happen. We're not talking about it. And then I go into the military. And when I go into the military, I go to Iraq in 2003. I was a combat engineer in the military. Went to sapper school, and I was relatively high speed, even though I was a terrible soldier. And I talk about that. I was definitely I was not the guy when you were like, okay, what is a great soldier? I was the guy that they were like, in the military, they referred to me as like a shitbag. Like, and that's truthfully where I was at. Like, I was not, it may have been the guy you wanted on your right when things got crazy, but I was definitely not the guy that came to the formation in like clean uniforms or any of that. And so I had a really hard time following orders. And so, but I come out of the military in 2003. I get back from Iraq, and when I was in Iraq, it was really clear at that time that something was wrong. Something was different. Me and my battle buddies, we'd sit around the campfire and we would talk at night. And we would all say basically the same thing. It's like, I know something is wrong. I know something is different with me, but right now I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get home and you reassimilate back into society, all of a sudden, because you have this new environment that you're in, everything that is wrong really comes to the surface. And then I realized really quickly I have terrible PTSD. And unfortunately for me, the American military really wasn't set up to deal with this at the time. We had just started the war effort. The military before September 11th, 2001 in the United States was basically a college fraternity. Like, I was a professional alcoholic. I went to work, I did my military thing. We got done at the end of the day and we partied, and that is what we did. So there was no like being a high speed soldier, all of this other stuff that kind of went on. And so, I was very unprepared. In fact, I feel like in a lot of ways, going to war, as much as it could have ended my life, saved my life,
Hmm.
because when I got the deployment orders, it became very clear to me that if I want to come home, I can't be this person that I have been this whole time. It's like, I can't be this kind of soldier that I've been and then expect to return home. And so it fixes me up a little bit. I come home, but we don't have any of the support groups. In fact, the first thing that they told us when we land, they're like, hey, if you think that you have mental issues right now and you need to talk to somebody, we'll send you down to the post mental health clinic, and you'll spend 5 to 7 days down there. And it's like, I've already been deployed for 8 months. I've been at war. The last thing in the world we're going to want to do is go get locked up in the mental health facility for 5 to 7 days. So we just didn't talk about it. We didn't. There was no resources. There was no PTSD awareness. And so there was a lot of soldiers that kind of came back in my group that were just kind of sent back into society, and we didn't really have any support group. In fact, I didn't even know I was covered by VA health insurance from 2003 to 2009. It wasn't until 2009 I ended up with a medical episode, and then it finally got severe enough where I needed to be hospitalized, that they made me aware that, oh, by the way, you have health insurance. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I was so grateful for that, because
Mm.
I probably would have had somewhere between 50 and $200,000 or $300,000 in medical bills if I wouldn't have had the
Jesus.
VA health insurance. And so we just didn't have that. And so I come out of the military, and I get married. I have children. I go to college. I mean, I'm doing the thing. And I started working. I started working part time at this tax preparation place, H&R Block, and I started as a tax preparer. And I was going to college, and it was like associate's degree, and this is what I was doing. And like all good stories, I just ended up staying there, right? And then the next thing you know, this is the next 20 years of my life. I work my way up through management. I started in the marketing department because I actually couldn't do taxes, which is really funny. I get hired by this company, and they're like, "Oh, hey, we want you to work for us." They put me in tax school. I failed tax school. Absolutely abysmal. Like, did terrible. But they were like, we still think you have potential. Maybe they felt sorry for me. I don't know. But they were like, we have this opening in marketing department. Would you like to do some marketing? And I was like, sure. Well, and then that kind of progressed, and I became tax preparer. Then I became a office manager, then a regional manager. And then right around 2015, 2016, I became the chief operations officer and partner of JC Business and Financial Services, which was the financial firm that owned the H&R Block franchise. So we owned 9 H&R Block locations, and then we were a full services financial firm behind the scenes. So the rest of the year, when we weren't being an H&R Block, we were just being a regular financial firm. Did that for a number of years, was very successful at what I did. And there were some key things there in the income tax preparation category. We were seeing declines. When I came in 2004, we were seeing 3.5 to 4% declines in revenue per year. To kind of put some numbers on it, our average tax return that we were selling was $180, and our flagship office, the year that I came on board, was doing 8,000 returns a year. And by the time that we sold the business in 2023, that office was down to 3,500 returns a year. And so this was a very significant issue, dealing with technology entering the market. You have TurboTax, you have H&R Block Online, you have all this stuff. And so we're in this dynamic industry that, oh, by the way, college doesn't prepare you for, because it's a seasonal industry, and everything that you're doing in college is based around these corporate full-time jobs. Like, I'm trying to reverse engineer everything I'm learning at college and trying to apply it to this weird industry that I have no idea how to deal with, and it's the most frustrating thing in the world. But I finally figured it out. And my 3 years as tenure, my first 3 years as tenure as COO, we seen a 13.5% increase over those 3 years. And then we started maintaining about a 7% increase every year in a region that was losing about 4% a year. Well, I get a phone call one day, and the owner of the business, because everybody was partners except for the original owner, which was still the CEO, and she said, "Hey, H&R Block contacted, and they said they want to buy us." And the first thing I did is I freak out, because I'm like, H&R Block doesn't buy franchises. One, so what did we do wrong? I'm thinking, oh no, this is a bad thing. Like, we're getting ready to lose our licensing agreement. Like, this isn't going to be good. And so I contacted her back, and then we started negotiations. And so I took over lead in negotiation, and I figured, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it. And so I put together a package, and I threw a figure out, and it was relatively high, and I felt like we were going to go to negotiations, and this is where it would end. And that did not happen. They just said, okay, let's go. And so we sold the business back to the company, in 2023, and thankfully enough, it was for enough that all of us got to enjoy a version of semi-retirement. A lot of people did retire. I chose to go into semi-retirement. I still teach at college, so I'm a professor of business for two universities, and so I do that. And then I do this medicine space stuff. I'm very heavily involved in the veteran sphere, and in that business sale story actually is a manifest that occurred that started about 3.5, maybe 4 years before that moment. And so I started to see all these major changes in my life, starting around 6 years ago. And that was the first big one that was just like, wow, all of a sudden I realized that, like, cataclysmically changing your life was a real possibility. And then I started to understand the mechanics of how these things work, and then just started living my life based on that, and then decided that, like, spreading that message of healing and some of the stuff that went in that became my focus. And so now today, I spend most of my time, when I'm not teaching, I'm obviously in the medicine space. I'm in the personal health and development space, and I work with people, whether it be facilitating medicine or just working through different types of therapies and different modalities. That was a
Wow.
long answer, but you were like, give me your life history, and I was like, here you go. That's
Covered
my
it
life
all.
history. I don't know what else you need to know about me. I I,
Oh,
I
that's
I am a
it.
semi-successful parent. I have one good kid out of four. We're doing okay.
One good kid out of four. Well, who's
I
to
have
say they're
one out of
not all
four.
good?
It took time. Well, the
They're-
kids are good. My raising of those children wasn't very good. It took me a while to kind of figure these things out. But by the time we got down to the last one, like, we got that one right. So I consider, like, one out of four. I'm betting
oh my god.
25%. I'm very satisfied.
Isn't it?
I wish I could go back with
Mm.
the growth, the lessons, the learning, the person that I am today. I wish that I could go back and give that to my other children that were older. Unfortunately, I just wasn't in that space in my life to be able to
Mm.
give them the kind of information that they would need to be able to be healthy humans in this world. And unfortunately, a lot of my two children subscripted, and then one just kind of went off the rails. And so we're given space for that. So
Wow, there's only so much you can do as a parent, right? And
yes.
I guess I so know that part of the story of you wish you would have done things differently, because I've got three kids and same story, I wish I would have done things differently with them. I wish I had more awareness at the time when they were little, and I would have dealt with them differently instead of repeating the patterns of my parents and all that jazz. But holy moly, let's go back to, because wow, you touched on when you were in the military, when you went to war, and
Mhm.
you figured out that something was different with you. What do you mean? Like, what was different? Could you tell? Do you know now what was different? What were the signs, I would say?
Oh yeah, I think now, I'm far enough down the road, and I've worked through enough therapies, whether it be cognitive behavioral therapy, plant medicine, things of that nature. I've been able to really kind of understand what the mechanics were that was wrong. And at the time I didn't. We I'm going to back up for a second. We live in a world in which we are trained to be subscripted to a society that exists. When you go into war, you are removing yourself from a society and a civilization that you are used to functioning within, and then all of the parameters and all of the rules change, all of the behaviors change, and you're in this high stress situation. You're in a high stress environment. You have all of these moral conflicts that are occurring. You really don't know how you feel about them, and you're achieving this certain level of trauma. And I think that the physical trauma, whether and people don't realize that stress causes brain injury, and then you combine that with the environment of battle, and you're around explosions and loud explosions and gunfire and things of this nature. And I believe that it causes a lot of damage to the brain. Now, I have never personally been scanned for TBI, but I came out of the military, and then I spent the next 16 years in the martial arts doing Muay Thai and MMA and Jiu-Jitsu. So I got hit in the head a lot. So I would imagine by the time I started my plant medicine journey, I had a significant amount of brain damage, probably in the 20 to 30 percentile range. And I think that was a big part of it when I was overseas. I was seeing these
Mm.
neurological changes that was occurring. I was having high stress responses, cortisol, things of that nature. The biggest tell for me when I came home was I started developing shakes really bad. And I would be in situations, and I would literally, my hands would start shaking so bad I couldn't eat. And one night I was at a family dinner with my brother and my nephew, and I am at Ruby Tuesdays. The shakes come on, and I'm trying to eat this salad, and literally I'm shaking so bad that the salad is like flying all over the plate, and I'm really upset because I can't stop this
Mm.
physical thing that's occurring. And what it was well, I'll tell the end of the story so we can explain what it was. So a few minutes later, my nephew at the time, who had just turned 16, got his driver's license and permit, and my brother was like, "Oh, Spencer's going to drive," and it was like, boom, steady as a rock. And I had been used to being under so much stress for so long that when I would relax, my nervous system was freaking out. And I
Mm.
started getting shakes, and I started having these physical reactions where I couldn't control what was going on with my body. And that was the first tell that, like, oh, I may have a real problem here. I have something going on that I don't understand. And then that progressed further. I started getting night sweats, like night terrors, very different than what they talk about in the movies. And I am no expert in this field, so I'm not going to tell you what other people's experiences are. I know maybe a lot of people out there have flashbacks and the versions of dreams and visualizations and things. I did not get that. I had
Mhm.
emotional flashbacks. And
Mhm.
so I started having these dreams, and I started having all this stuff, and I had no tools to deal with it. And then eventually it started to really come to a head to where I would get this disassociation that would occur. I would be in an environment. I was going to Kansas State University at the time, and they had these low, probably 2 to 3 story buildings through this courtyard. It's very reminiscent of the buildings in Iraq, because there's not a lot of skyscrapers in Iraq. They're all like 2 3 story buildings. And when we would go out on roving patrols, we're constantly scanning rooftops, and we're looking for threats. We're looking for in windows, out of windows, behind alleys. We're scanning for any potential threat that might be in the area. And so that behavior doesn't leave you. Like, you get home, and now you're scanning. Like, when I first got home, every time a car drove by, I could tell you how many people were in the vehicle, whether it was men, women,
Wow.
children. I knew at any moment in time what was in my surroundings. When I would walk into buildings, the first thing I was looking at is how many people are in the room, where are the exits, how do I move in and out of this space, how do I maintain safety. And so these were very programmed things. And so I come into this courtyard, and I get triggered, and all of a sudden I feel like the only way I know to refer to this, I call it disassociation, but I I'm behind a glass now, and I can see the world, but I can't interact with it.
Mm.
And I'm
Mhm.
frozen, and I'm literally on the other side of this like invisible wall that is keeping me from interacting with the world around me. And that, I think it was a combination of the shakes, the combination of the disassociation, and then I had also joined the National Guard, and so I had my first drill coming up, and I went to go put my uniform back on for the first time, and it had been about 60 days since I'd worn a uniform, and I had a massive meltdown. I mean,
Mm.
shakes, panic attacks, I couldn't breathe, like everything was freaking out. And and mind you, all of these things don't sound bad, except for they're uncontrolled, and you have no idea what's happening. You are
Mm.
completely blindsided right now. You're like, and you don't know how to fix it. You don't know what's wrong. You don't know how to fix it. You don't have anybody you can talk to. You don't have friends. None of your friends are talking about it. Everybody's like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. Everything's fine. And that's what I'm telling. I'm fine. This didn't bother me. And to a degree, I'm really thankful for that approach because it allowed me, even though I was a deeply damaged human, it allowed me to be able to functionally do things like go to college, get a job, maintain a family, have children that helped me at least assimilate back into society in a way that was productive for myself. I still achieved some pretty amazing things. Like if you just looked at my Matrix life was going pretty good. But if you were looking behind the scenes, I was an alcoholic. I was aggressive. I was abusive. I was a narcissist. I was not a good human being. Even though I had some good traits, I was not an overall good human being. And the further behind the curtain you got, the further to myself you got, then my poor wife at the time, like her life was living hell, and I feel so bad for the experiences that she had to endure. And so those are kind of the things that I realized was wrong. I think it was just like neurological programming damage, stress response, and really now then just processing these things. And the culmination of that is ended up being what I refer to as flashbacks. And I still get these every now and then. So this has been a lifelong thing. I had one that surfaced a while back that was kind of different, but I will get these emotional responses to things. And and when they first started, it was happening all the time, and it was relative. I'd be driving down the road, and all of a sudden I'm bawling like a baby, like
Mm,
tears coming down my eyes, like snot, like I mean ugly cry. No idea why. Nothing in my world was bad. Nothing was going on. I was just like driving to work. Like it was a very normal moment in time. No reason to be crying like, my child just died. I had no clue what was
mm,
happening. And so I started, a friend of mine had given me some free writing techniques, and I started to do some free writing techniques at that time. And then I realized that, oh, what I was having was emotional memories. These were experiences, places, things that I had been, things that I had done. These were actual memories, but I wasn't experiencing the memory. I was experiencing the emotional state during the memory. And for me, what I had to figure out is I had to learn to connect the memory with the emotional state. Because when I couldn't understand what was happening, I couldn't associate where the memory was occurring. So I didn't know what was wrong. And sometimes this would last for days, sometimes weeks. The longest one I think went on for like 3 months. I couldn't place the memory. And
mhm,
so those were my main areas of PTSD that I was aware of. Now, I probably exhibited more issues, but again, no professional counseling at that time, no professional intervention. I had no real way of knowing other than that was the four major areas that I was dealing with and working with. And those were the things that ended up being quote unquote wrong with me when I was in theater. That when underneath the stress inside of that environment, in the mental state that I was in, I was really honestly fine. I felt like I was functioning very well. But when I came back to society, I was no longer functioning well.
I am. I don't know whether it's your style of speaking or what you're sharing, but I feel like I am so zoned into what you share. Every time you talk, it's like maybe that's your superpower or part of it.
Well,
You said
thank you. I'm just trying to get them. I don't know.
honestly, who are you trying to get? I don't know.
Superpowers. I want superpowers.
Oh, the superpowers. I think you've already got him. Like your parrot is parroting. Your parrot is really parroting. Wowzer. Okay, you said you started off with free writing. Is that like one of your friends? Because all this time when you're describing all these things, I'm like, how did you? You've had this culmination of things happening. It wasn't like one major thing. It was a bundle of joys that just kept pouring into you. So besides the starting to free write, what was the path that you took on from there? Like how did you start your healing journey?
Oh yeah, that didn't start for a very long time. I coped with copious
Mm,
and copious amounts of alcohol. That's what I was good at. That was my skill set. I was an alcoholic, a very functional alcoholic. I
mm.
was drinking around a fifth of whiskey a day, and I drank scotch. So I'd put back a fifth of scotch, and you know, uh, I was a I was coping through very, very bad methods. But The free writing was about the only mental health technique that I knew. And that would be I would just get into spaces and I would just write. And I'm an artist and a poet, and I have been an artist and a poet most of my life. And so the free writing and the brainstorming was very familiar to me as a poet. And so
Mhm.
I would sit down and I would just very, I think, halfway poetically just put all of this dark stuff that was in my head, and I would just put it out and I would put it out and I'd put it out. And I'd have moments where I'd wake up in the middle of the night and I couldn't sleep, and I would just sit down and I'd grab a piece of paper, and 2 or 3 pages later I would just sorry, I would just pour this information out on these pages, and then it was like the shut off switch would occur and I could just fall back asleep. But then I would wake up and I would read what I had wrote, and it's dark, like really dark. And I was so embarrassed of that I had burned most of what I wrote. I never did keep it. I would throw it away. I would destroy it. I was so afraid that
Mm.
someone would see this in me and that someone would know that I was this person.
Mm.
And so, man, I didn't expect to get emotional. I'm sorry.
Don't ever,
But
don't ever.
I had I had worked really hard, really trying to hide that person away. And without getting in the details, because I don't think there's a lot of people out there that can relate. Um, it, that you become a certain type of human being, and to me I think it's very survival instinct based. You go back to like this base instinct where you just are trying to survive. Like, one of the easiest things about being in Iraq, and if I do miss anything, I miss the simplicity of it. I'd
Mm.
wake up in the morning and I had one job today. Don't die.
Mhm.
Wake up tomorrow. Got it. Like, check. I didn't have bills. I didn't have a spouse that was mad at me. I didn't have deadlines at work. I didn't have all this shit going on. I didn't have a car breaking down. I knew everything that I needed. All my meals are taken care of. All of my basic life needs are taken care of. All I had to do was wake up and not die. Like, that was it. And so the stress that we are under in this particular society is actually way greater than the stress that you're under when you're at war. It really is. But you have to embrace this terrible part of yourself that you may not be okay with, that eventually over time, at least for me, and I can't speak for everyone, I had a lot of trauma going into the military. And so maybe the reason why I embraced this so well, kind of upon reflection, is I was looking for a way to have control. I had never felt in control in my life. And then all of
Mm.
a sudden I get into this, you know, battle, fighting, war is power. It's control. You are in this godlike state where you are choosing whether you are taking life or not. And you get addicted to it. And I know that sounds terrible, and it makes me feel bad even saying it out loud, but I did. I got addicted to the violence. I got addicted to everything that came with it. And so one of the things that made this so hard to talk about is, you get these guys that come home from war, and I've worked with hundreds of veterans now. I am a board treasurer of the Grunt Style Foundation, which is the largest veteran nonprofit foundation in the United States, next to the VFW, and they're our major partner. And so I've had the opportunity now to work with hundreds of veterans. And if there's any one theme that I will tell you from the people that, because there's two sides of this, there are the veterans that went to war that didn't fight, and
Mm.
some of them come home and they have stories, and I think maybe deeply rooted in their own insecurities. So they wanted the accolades that come with it. But the problem is, when you're one of the people that have the accolades, you don't want it. You just don't.
Mhm.
And it's not fun. It's not cool. And you have to live with that. Like, at the end of the day, that's your shit. And we don't talk about it. And we don't. You're not gonna run around and find somebody that is a real hardened combat veteran at a party talking about their war experience, and it just doesn't
Mm.
happen. And For me, I think the reason why is because everybody expects you to be regretful. Everybody expects you to be like, oh, you must have hated it. Oh, now you've got to deal with this terrible thing. You've taken people's lives. You've done all this stuff. That must just really weigh on you. Actually, it's really the opposite. At least for me. I enjoyed it, and that was the part that I couldn't come to terms with. How do you tell somebody I actually liked it? How do you tell somebody I missed it? There was an article in Esquire magazine that was wrote many years ago. It says, I miss Iraq, my war, and my gun. And that hit home with me so strongly because that's what I was struggling with. I was struggling with coming to terms with this other side of myself, this really dark, terrible person that I had developed, this character that I created to protect myself. And then all of a sudden now I was viewing it as outside of myself. And I couldn't come to terms. I couldn't find the wholeness in it. I couldn't find a way to accept it. I wanted to just tear it away and get rid of it. And ultimately, many years later, I discovered that that wasn't the key. It's not about tearing apart this version of yourself or this portion of yourself, but it's about embracing it and then understanding, like, I developed this skill during a time of severe trauma. This kept me alive. This was important for me in that space, which means also when you're in other situations in life that may occur, I'm very glad to have it. I am. But you have to come one with that, and to stop with the regret, to stop with the hate, to stop with the thing. I can't take back anything that I've done. I'm not grateful for that. I feel so terribly for the families and the family members and the people of Iraq. They were so good to me. And the trauma and the pain that we left behind on those people is immense. I'm regretful of that. But that's not the same thing as being regretful of the person that I needed to be in that moment in my life to maintain my safety. And so I think these are very important things that you have to compartmentalize over time. And you have to say, yeah, it's not the pretty story. Nobody wants to hear that. Everybody wants the veteran that is full of existential regret. And unfortunately, that's not the case. Not everybody is going to have that. But what you can have is you can have growing, you can have healing, and then you can also choose, like, how are you going to move forward and how are you going to change the impact that you're leaving in the world versus where you were at. I,
I
I don't
so
know if that answered your question completely.
I, I, I don't even know what I asked at this point, to be honest, but I appreciate what you're sharing in here because a lot of people don't want to look at the dark parts within themselves and come into terms with the fact that this is still a part of me, and facing those and accepting those parts and loving them fully is what produces change, because I
Yes.
can hear it in you. Could you speak a little bit about how you filled in that gap? How did you come to terms with those both parts of you, and how did you marry them? And also, what does the plant medicine, because you mentioned plant medicine, what does that have, what part does that play in your healing journey?
Yeah, that's a great question. So maybe to more thoroughly answer the first question, from 2003 to 2020, nothing really happened. That was journaling. That was about the only method of anything that I had. Other than that, and alcoholism, that's all I was doing. And so I get to 2020, COVID happens. Obviously, it's a big year for me. But more importantly for me, I'm going through divorce. And I finally, this is really funny. I'm going to speak from two different sides. I'm going to speak from the where I was at and then the reflection. The where I was at, I was really tired of putting up with my ex-wife shit. I felt like I was the one, I was the provider, I was doing all this stuff, and I was taking care of everything, and I felt like I was just carrying her through life. And I was really unhappy and really miserable. I was very much at the point of suicidal ideation. And I just got to this point where I just wanted to pull the pin on the grenade and blow up my life. And because I'm kind of an adrenaline junkie, that's exactly what I did. I was just like, oh, you know what we should do? Woo, see what happens. And it did. It went boom. And it was terrible. It was such a bad idea. I do not recommend this method. It was such a bad idea. So I started having affairs and I started cheating on my ex-wife. I started doing all of these absolutely disgusting, terrible things. And finally she found out about it. And the whole reason why I was doing this is because I was a coward. I was too
Mm.
scared to just look at her like in the face and be like, I want a divorce. So, I was like, well, if I go do all these terrible things and I get caught, then boom, the grenade will go off, and then I'm so much better at dealing with the after effect, right? Not
Mm.
the pre-planning of that. And so I did. I just blew my life up. And so it starts spiraling. My alcoholism goes off the range. I almost kill myself. Like, I ended up meeting the partner that is my wife today in the midst of this craziness. And my wife today, she was coming out of this similar thing. She had 15 years of this terrible narcissistic abusive relationship, and she had just got a divorce, and she finds me, and I am atypical everything she's trying to leave, right? So this is not good for her. Like, she just goes from bad to me. And then but thankfully she met me at a point in life where I was willing, ready to accept change. I was
Mm.
willing and ready to say, I don't know better. Because the one thing that happened in my life at this moment, there was this moment in time where I'm sitting in my living room and my life is shit. My wife at the time is now in Tennessee. She's got both of my children, so I've lost my wife, I've lost my kids. I'm sitting in this house in Missouri. I've got a business that's going crazy, and I am drunk all the time, and I'm not going to work, and I'm smoking weed all the time, and like I am destroying my life as best as I can, full force. And I'm sitting in this living room, and I'm just kind of looking around, and it finally dawns on me, like, I have this moment of realization that my life is the outcome of the decisions and behaviors that I have been enacting throughout my life. And if I really hate my life, then I have no one else to blame but myself. And that hit like a ton of bricks, because it was like, at this moment, up until this moment, I'm doing like what everybody else is doing. I'm blaming everybody else. It's my ex-wife's fault. It's my kid's fault. It's my job's fault. It's Missouri's fault. It's this fault. It's the United States fault. The president did it, whatever. It was everybody's fault but mine. But then I got to that moment where I was like, oh, fuck me, man. Like, this is really my problem. Like, I did this to me. So
It
it's like,
was me all along.
yeah, I'm wanting to like end my life because I don't want to live with me anymore. Like,
Mm.
let's be honest, like, why do I want to kill myself? Because holy shit, because I'm destroying everything that I touch. And and then it was just like, oh, and so I went through this like spiral of depression. But I had this moment in my fighting career many years ago where I was faced with something about myself that I really didn't like, and I had a crossroads. I had to either choose it or change it, and
Mm.
thankfully for me, I made the decision then to change it. And so using that past experience, and having that there so strong and present in my life, I really got into the mindset. Then it was like, okay, I can change this then. If my life is a result of the outcomes of my behaviors, then if I start changing my behaviors, oh, I can change my outcomes. And that is when I started. That was like the actual moment when I decided to, like, I should probably start looking into this personal growth stuff. Like, maybe I should get some therapy. Maybe I should start to figure out my way through this. And so that's when my personal growth started. And it didn't start with plant medicine. It actually started with cognitive behavioral therapy. It
Mhm.
started with going to therapy through the VA, through other outside sources. Um, I was also dealing with some other mental issues that kind of arose around that time. My severe alcoholism, my drug abuse, and my overall mental state of being created a lot of problems. And then going through divorce, so for a man, and especially for me, somebody who was definitely a I'm going to use the word sex addict, but I had a porn addiction. So it wasn't like I was out there, like, playing the field, sleeping with hundreds of people. No, I did not have that many people that wanted to have sex with me. But I was able to go out and achieve it through porn and other things. And so going through the divorce actually created this period of erectile dysfunction that I had to deal with, which in my life was like probably one of the most significant PTSD moments outside of war. Like, believe it or not, like that.
I can totally understand it.
I almost killed myself again over this
Mm.
situation. And so I was
Mhm.
going to therapy through that. And I started to really make behavioral changes and started to really reflect on my thought process and my thinking process, which is the basis of my programs that I use today, that I work with people today. I believe that these cognitive intellectual processes that are happening behind the scene, how we process information, how we think about things, how we view ourselves, the lenses that we use to examine, and then getting to ourselves to a state of like metacognition is really the key, because so many people don't understand that you really are the generator of your thought. You control that. And so many people, especially myself at that time, I was a victim of my thoughts. My brain was running crazy. It was going in whatever direction, and I felt powerless to do anything against it. And so I would literally sometimes like end up at the end of the day, I'd be in like the fetal position in bed because I had just obliterated myself all day long, and I couldn't shut it off. I couldn't shut it off. Well, I had no concept of like, oh, you are controlling that, man. You're doing that to you. So like on the external and the internal, it was ended up being the same answer. It was like, I'm the problem. And so I had to start learning like how to fix the problem. And so that from 2020 to 2023, I was using a lot of basic psychological tools, cognitive behavioral therapy, and a general overall awareness and awakening to like just trying to be a better version of myself every day than I was yesterday. And that
Mhm.
got me through a lot. I mean, I made so much growth and progress for those 3 years. But then, ayahuasca occurred in September of 2023, and yeah, that was radically life changing at that point. Things went to a completely different level. Everything shifted, and then all of a sudden I learned the power of plant medicine, and very specifically neuroplasticity and neurotrophy, and how to really regrow the brain so that those cognitive functions are working the way that they're supposed to be.
Boo. Every wave of you speaking is like, whoo. Okay, one. This
I'm
is
long
such a
ended.
side. What? This is such a side note. This is this is a me a meeting, and I'm gonna share it because it just blew my mind as you were speaking. I am single at the moment, and one of the things that I look into a man, and the things that go in my head are, this is so funny. If they had any like alcohol addiction or drug addiction or porn addiction, everything that you mentioned in there, if they have worked through that, cool. Because I don't want that in my life, you know. But I also understand that a lot of people, if they don't face that within themselves, it's repressed somehow. So you speaking about this was like, this guy is just talking about the things that go on in my head many times. So this is so interesting for me to hear you talk about this. Now, let's return to you and the ayahuasca, because I don't want to just brush that off, to be honest.
Well,
And I still,
let's shelf that because I want to mention that statement later. I know you have editing power. I am very anti patriarchy, and I am very anti manosphere, and I have grown through that. And once I understood where my sex addiction came from, I hate it beyond all measures. I would love to speak on that at some point.
so do you want to go into that now? Because
It's
I
up to you.
believe
We
you
can
brought
always
it
circle
up.
back to the ayahuasca, but yeah,
Oh, we're circle. I want to get into so many other things, but let's go
let's
there
go.
because you just mentioned it. Go ahead.
You
Speak
know,
on your addiction.
yeah, I realize like we live in a male patriarchal society, and the more that I've researched this, realizing this goes back about 2 to 3 thousand years. This actually started with the when the Greek society was really falling. There was a lot of, not necessarily the entire society wasn't matriarchal, but there was large matriarchal segments of the Greek society. And when the Romans developed their society, they were a patriarchal society, which is why, or at least why, I believe that we have the patriarchal influence in Roman Catholicism that started with Paul and the Bible, and then we see that movement over because the government in and of itself of Rome was very patriarchal, and then we just kind of stayed there. That's been going on for 3,000 years. So one of the things that, and I think it's very important, and I want to be very clear and honest with this for the audience and just for you, this is still something that I'm working through. I am not a recovering patriarch, okay? I am somebody who is about 50% of the way to becoming an adult. And that's what I realized.
Mm.
This patriarchal society as a male, it stunts you. I've raised both a boy and a girl, and I have 3 boys total because 2 children come from my wife. And then I brought 2 children into our relationship. So we're a blended family. And so we have 3 boys and 1 girl. And I was such a subscriber to patriarchal society that I raised my daughter in a completely different way than I raised my son. And my daughter is a much more functional human being. She's got adult principles. She does dishes, she can do her chores, she can maintain and manage herself. She can do all of these wonderful things that I wasn't expecting of my son nor myself. And so one of the things that my wife would tell me for many years is she goes, "I want you said you were going to be my partner. I need
Mm.
a partner." She goes, I don't feel like I have a partner. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking? I go to work, I pay the bills, like I do dishes every now and then, I help you around the house, I do all this stuff. And then again, just in that statement, I help you around the house. What? This is my house too. Who the hell am I helping? This is my job. These are my responsibilities. This is my home. I should be an adult. And then I've realized that after studying this enough, there's a plenty of studies out there where this raising boys in a patriarchal society stunts brain development, which is why we have high influences of ADHD and things like that in this country and probably globally. But I can't speak on anything outside of the United States. I'm not familiar with those cultures. And but here, it creates a stunting in the development of the male mind. And so you have a bunch of men that are running around this world right now that are
Children.
immature children that are actually neurologically underdeveloped. They don't even realize that they never fully developed mentally. And so they have this neurological, physiological issue that's occurring. And then they have all of these subscriptions to these things in society. And then what it creates is this hypersexualization. When you were taught to start objectifying women and sexualize women from a young age, and you're given all the reasons why it's okay. Well, I'm a guy, I'm visually turned on, this is part of my genetics. You know how surprised I was when I found out that women were way hornier than men, and that women's sexual organ was like 3 times larger than that of a man. And oh, by the way, they're much more built for pleasure than we are. My brain was like, what? What are you talking about? I don't understand. But then you realize it is these social conscriptions that are put on women that are, like the biggest thing that I've learned is men believe that women are so emotional. Bullshit. Bullshit. I'll tell you right now, you want to see emotional regulation? Look at women. You put up, if any average guy put up with half of the shit that a woman had to deal with on a day to day basis, they would be an emotional wreck and they would lose their shit. And then all of these guys out there are like, well, I'm not emotional. Yeah, you have two modes. You're either the life of the party or you're the asshole. And you're punching and screaming and kicking things. Explain to me how emotionally regulated you are when you're having a temper tantrum like a child. But that's okay because that's masculine. And so I really have learned so much in this space, and I'm obviously not the authority to be talking through it all of it because I'm still working through some of these spaces myself and still breaking some of these distortions and levels. But man, has it as a man, I am all of the things now that I actually rail against the most in society. I am a middle-aged, middle class white male. And I almost feel like sometimes like it's a joke because I don't actually believe this like in a real way, but sometimes I feel like I should just like apologize for showing up. I'm like, oh shit, here we go. I'm gonna spend like the next 40 minutes explaining why I'm not like that. Like, but you know, but that reputation exists for a reason.
Hmm.
So anyway, that's the few minutes. Maybe there's some men out there that need to hear some of that, but this understanding that you're the problem helps you get to a space to where you can also recognize those kind of problems because those are socially conscripted distortions. Those are things that people are buying into. When we want to talk about the matrix, That's the matrix. That is a social conscription that you have bought into, that you have owned, that now you defend, that you believe is your own, that was never yours in the first place. It was put on you by an entire society of people, and then they indoctrinated you to be a good follower of it, and then you accepted it and you just went on. Well, you can't break through those type of distortions until you get to a place, one, where you are sovereign up here and you are in control of your thoughts, and then you are truly developing the cognitive intellectual processes to challenge these types of things, because most people don't want to. And then two, once you realize that you're the problem, then you can kind of see, oh, well, shit, okay, well, then I have the other things that I want to fix too. And in doing that, the apology letters that I've written to my ex-wife and to my daughter, and the things that have changed in our relationships, because I said before, my ex-wife, I the way I felt, here's the reality, man, what a fucking hero. Like, I feel really bad for her. Like, what she put up with from me, she needs a hug. She was wronged and she was abused and she was put through things that no human should ever have to be put through. And all of the things that she told me, she used to tell me, you put me down, you diminish me, you talk bad down to me, you treat me this way, you're controlling. And I would, nah, whatever. She's 100% right. 100% right. She dealt with that for 16 years and like a fucking trooper. And she didn't deserve anything that happened to her. Where I'm at today, I'm still glad I got a divorce. We were not compatible, and we wouldn't be together today because of that. We had grown apart. But man, why I got a divorce and the reality of why we were getting divorced was two completely different things. And for her credit, she was willing to put up with that. She fought me after all of that abuse. She fought to stay with me. Talk about Stockholm syndrome. The best thing that ever happened to her was me getting out of the picture.
As you can probably tell, I'm having a moment.
Yeah, it's a lot, I know. Once you realize the amount of pain that this causes on the other side, it's hard to look past.
Just as the why this conversation started,
You got me
because
crying, man. Look at you.
because honestly, it's like it's when you kind, where is this going, Jesus? When you kind of wait somehow, somewhere, all your life for people to realize this, and then you're sat here in front of me and sharing all this, and it's like, oh my god. I think the amount of validation that just came out of that, of and what you're describing about your ex-wife sounds a lot like me somehow. Sounds a lot like the relationship that I went through for, well, 11 years in my case.
Yeah. And it's hard to escape because every relationship you go to, if you have a man that's still subscribing to this patriarchal society, and they're still subscribing to especially this dangerous shit that's out there in the manosphere, like,
I haven't even watched the
get into it.
Manosphere. I am not even drawn to. I don't know.
And
I've heard people talk about it, but I'm not even sure if I want to watch it because I think I would be too triggered to watch it, and I don't know if I'd be capable to.
they
It,
they've sold to the male, and again, I'm going to speak from the American male because I don't know how
whew,
this looks globally. They have sold to this American male victimization. Oh, you're a victim now because look, the same thing they did with the white person. We
yeah.
get this equal opportunity stuff that kind of starts to go around, and then we just passed a bunch of laws where we've eliminated a lot of these measures that we had worked so hard to get. And women are under that minority. You have especially in the United States, the way that I see it, and people may argue with me, but I think that you have racism and bigotry that occurs within races, and then you have the gender, the gender issues where women are below that. And they're the really honestly in this society specifically, I would say that women are probably the lowest ranking members of our society, and to a lot of men maybe even under their family pets. And I know that sounds extreme, but that's a real statement, because They view women as objects. They view women as a tool. They dissent them because they are their mothers. You know, if you're not in a fully developed adult and you're not parenting yourself, and you're not capable of parenting self, if your wife has to tell you where your keys are and where your wallet is, and if you have to find out like, is my laundry done? Did you press and iron that for me? Did you? Oh, I'm packing my bag, babe. Do you know where this is? Do you know where that is? Like, how much does this other human being need to do in your life for you to be functional? When that expectation would be one thing, I would have at least a little bit of grace if, as women entered the workforce and as women started to take on the male roles, we lowered this expectation. But we didn't. We increased it. Now women are expected to go work a full-time job, come home, take care of the kids, take care of the laundry, do the dishes, do the house, do the chores, make sure that the husband's stuff is taken care of, parent the husband too, and do all of this shit. And it's like, no, it's not supposed to be like that. And so men have victimized themselves because now they have mommies, and their mommies are mean to them, and their mommies don't want to have sex with them. Well, last time I checked, why would any woman want to have sex with her child? That would be a problem, right? You're creating this environment now where you have moved yourself from partner and mate to child and liability. And now you want this person to share with you physical affection, and you want them to give you intimacy. Okay, I'm sorry, no, that's not how that works. And but the reaction to it, what is being sold to the American male is, oh, women are using sex against men, and women are holding this against you, and this is power play. Yeah, absolutely, it's a power play because you're not recognizing what's happening on the other side of that. It is a power play. It's the only thing they've got. Everything else is controlled by you. Everything else is dictated by you. And oh, when it all comes down to the end, you're going to use your physicality as a way to say, well, if I really don't like it, I'm going to get violent. Then what? Okay. Well, now you've created this impossible scenario for somebody on the other side of that. And then you add a minority into that, and it gets even worse. I feel so bad for minority women. Like, it's the struggles that I watch, the women in my life, which are white women, dealing with. I can't imagine what the struggle is like for minority women in this country. And there's just not enough men that are paying attention. There's not enough men that are willing to step up. And what we're doing is we're getting behind closed doors. And if you heard the vile, terrible shit that men say behind closed doors about women, and the way that they view women, and the way that they truly don't view women as equals. I mean, I had a pastor at a church tell me once, before I went into the ministry, and I'm no longer a minister today, so we don't have to cover that. But he said, God, Anthony, you have to understand, God did not create women equal to men. Oh, well, so that's the basis and the fundamental
Wow.
belief of your religion? Well, what does that do if you're born with a vagina? God just didn't like you enough? Like, what the fuck are we doing? Like, but men aren't questioning that. Why? Because it's reinforcing self. Oh, I'm a man. It makes me feel good. God likes me. Look, I've got favor. And so, anyway, I'm going to step off my soapbox, but this patriarchal bullshit that we are dealing with right now is one of the major areas of awakening in society that I do believe that we have to get to if we want to see any real positive change. Everybody talks about how the world's going to change and we're going to wake up and develop superpowers and all this stuff, and the aliens are going to come back and, all this shit. Okay. But the real change is when we decide that the behaviors that we're doing are not right and we want a better world, and we're going to start doing better. Like Maya Angelou said, once you know better, do better. Period.
I gotta take a moment because there's so much in this. Because there's the part of zooming out as well. Because I also see the part of women can totally go on the side of becoming the victim of their existence and their lives, and victim of men, which I totally believe is not the case. But I also see both parts and their roles that they play in this awakening, right? In the whatever new is going to happen, whatever society. In my head, okay, the aliens and the superpowers and whatever, that's like a byproduct. That's like such a side note to the humanity that we are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I believe us as humans need that too. I believe this whole new age spirituality that's been going on, because spirituality has become a religion now, in my opinion.
Yes,
It's just like another religion. It's so much full of bypassing. It's like everything is light and love, but then your human self, your inner child, your wounding and your programming and all of that side is just put aside. No, you cannot feel that because that's not love and light. Fuck you.
exactly.
Honestly. And I am
Preach.
so glad. I am so glad that you spoke on all of this. To be honest, I appreciate. I love. I love when I am so left field taken by surprise with things that just pop into conversation. I appreciate you talking on this so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. I appreciate you giving me the
Talking
space to
stick.
be able to do that. Yeah,
Here, hold the stick.
I haven't. This is not something I've spoke out on publicly yet, and it's not something I really spoke out on my channel too much. Obviously, I've talked about it a little bit, but honestly, I think for my channel, I've been kind of waiting until I grow a little further through this space. I don't want to speak with authority on something that I'm not 100% living right now. Like
And
I'm still breaking the distortions, and so it takes
honestly,
a while.
even the part that you have this awareness around it, and to me you've already taken the steps and you're already doing the steps, but the seeing it and being aware of maybe I'm not ready for it, even that, it's so much appreciated. I'm telling you now, because I know I appreciate it. You're not a person in my life. I barely met you today, right?
Yeah,
We had a couple back and forth messages, and I appreciate what you do so fucking much. Like, I cannot even tell you because I know it has ripples, and you're also helping other people because we haven't even gone to that yet.
yep.
You're also walking other people through this. Oh, but in the meantime, I so appreciate you sharing all that and speaking on it.
Oh, thank
And
you.
because you spoke about the brain and the growing different connections inside of it, making new cells. Please speak on your ayahuasca journey. I am so curious how that has shifted your trajectory
Yeah,
and where it take.
all these are long stories. I'm doing my best
Oh,
to be as concise as I can be.
I don't
But
care.
so I go to ayahuasca, and I am first off super grateful for my opportunity to go to ayahuasca. I went to ayahuasca with the Grunstyle Foundation. They have this great program for veterans where they have scholarship programs and all this amazing stuff. And anyway, I had this little podcast going called the Stoned Apes Podcast, and we caught the attention of Grunstyle. The Grunstyle Foundation was kind of just growing up, and we were a veteran-led podcast, and they really liked our content. And we were sitting around smoking and joking, and telling stories and just being veterans, and they loved it. And so they picked up on our show, and over time working with them, they were like, they recognize they really do a great job of working with veterans behind the scenes and really kind of identifying like, hey, you have some stuff going on here. Would you like to learn a little bit more about that? And they identified me pretty quick. They were like, oh yeah, you look like you're relatively well put together on the surface, but you look like you're a shit show behind the scenes, man. I think maybe you need some help. And so I was like, oh yeah, you may be right. And I think if you're not going to judge me, I think that's great. Let's go. And so we went to Aya, and I had this amazing, life changing ayahuasca experience, and then the next 3 years occurs. And so what I want to touch upon my particular plant medicine growth cycle is I was introduced to plant medicine in what I believe to be a wonderful way. I was also introduced to plant medicine in a way today that I would tell you I am adamantly opposed to and 100% against, because I don't practice plant medicine in this way anymore. And it started all the ways that everybody. I started listening to Joe Rogan, and then I was out there listening to like Aubrey Marcus and like trying to find out like what is this ayahuasca shit. And I'm watching like my favorite one is I can't think of the guy. Josh Gates. He did Expedition Unknown, and he goes down and does ayahuasca in the jungle. And there's this moment of reflection afterward where he's on camera. It may be the most honest tell ever sold on TV. Like, he is just completely, like, you can tell, like, this man just went through some shit. He's seen some shit, and like, he is never going to be the same. And he's doing this live on camera, and that hooked me. And so,
Mm.
I'm expecting, like everybody else, I'm expecting to go to ayahuasca, and I want to meet God. I'm an ex-pastor. I've dealt with existential issues most of my life. I'm heavily educated in the existential space, like on multiple different religions: Christianity, Gnosticism, Egyptology, and just a whole bunch of offshoots from there. But those are the primary ones. And so my esoteric knowledge and things of that nature were off the charts, and are still. I still love that stuff as brain food, but not in a serious way anymore. I study it more like, we would good stories, and I enjoy the brain exercise of it. And but I go into this really thinking I'm having this like fucking spiritual experience. Like, I'm gonna go meet God, right? And I'm thinking like there's gonna be like Odin, there's gonna be like lightning bolts from heaven, like I'm gonna meet these jokers and demons, and like people are telling me all this shit, right? And my ayahuasca experiences and every psychedelic experience I've ever had up to this point couldn't be further from that truth. In fact, I don't have visions of anything ever. I have the slightest visions that occur at the beginning of every journey, which the only thing that I can explain that is a color wheel of ruins that are spinning like some type of ancient clock, and they spin very crazy in all different directions. And when I see them, I recognize them. I know what it is. Now, I don't have an awareness. Like, a lot of people say that, oh, I seen these signs and I knew exactly what all of that meant. Yeah, bullshit. I don't have a clue what it means. Okay, I couldn't tell you the meaning of one of those ruins. I know that I see them. I know it goes crazy, and then I know I catapult through this like portal of light, and then it's just dark again, and then everything starts. But I'm not alone. I'm never alone. I understand very clearly like what is happening in those spaces. But I had this very profound ayahuasca experience where, I thought I met God 3 nights in a row. And I mean, I was like really hooked, and then started the plant medicine journey. But in my own case, throughout this plant medicine journey, I started to get caught in the traps. There's so many traps. Like you mentioned earlier, the spiritual space has become a new religion. The spiritual space is dangerous. There's a lot of bad actors. There's a lot of predators in this space. There's a lot of people that are just selling bullshit, Jay Shetty, Aubrey Marcus. Uh, so yeah, hopefully your listeners are not fans, because I want to talk all kinds of shit on these guys. Like, this shit that Aubrey Marcus has done with his wife, like, somebody needs to seriously punch him in the face. Like, and I if he was here, I would be the one to do it. Like, I don't even care. But that is gross, disgusting misuse of religion, spiritual authority, and every other thing. That is absolutely wrong. And so these are the leaders of this community now, and these are the ones that everybody is like, this is who we should be going after. And I found all these traps. And so in my own practice, long story short, I have moved away from the spirituality of plant medicine, not as a disbelief, as a true lack of understanding. If there is spiritual things happening in the medicine, they really are truly beyond our understanding, and they are beyond our conceptualization. And I could take time to explain, like, it is, once you really kind of get into this, you will really understand it's impossible to know anything. And so you have to have this space of where you understand that there are things out there that you don't understand, and you can recognize that and you can accept that. But these are not ways to live your life to abide by. There are other parts of the medicine is a neurotropic. It heals and regrows the brain. Neurotrophy is the regrowing of brain tissue. Neuroplasticity is the rewiring and remapping of neural connections. And so, when we have forms, behaviors, memories, whatever, we're forming new neural connections every day. And that is these neural connections. Like if you get depressed, well, you have a superhighway that leads to that, right? You have developed these really strong neural connections that lead you to that stage of depression. And the second that trigger happens, you're going to be on that highway and you're going that road. And when you realize that, and you realize that most people, especially veterans and other people that are suffering from traumas like PTSD and things like that, these are brain injuries. And everybody has trauma. One of the things that I have really kind of gotten over in this space also is the glorification of the veteran space. There's a victimization and a glorification in the veteran space that somehow my trauma is more important than others. Bullshit. Everybody has trauma. Literally everybody. We live in a world that is just dumping out trauma all day long, every day. You don't need to go to war to get trauma. I had significant PTSD before I ever showed up in the military. The military was compound PTSD now, but most people are dealing with that. You have car accidents, you have loved ones die, you have narcissistic abusive relationships, you get sexual trauma, all of this terrible stuff that's happening in the world. You don't need to be a veteran for that. And so, I've just kind of changed this back to this, like, I approach it from more a biological, scientific, physiological space using psychological tools with the respect and appreciation for the spiritual in a space of open misunderstanding or not being able to understand. And that has produced so much for me. And most importantly, I believe I want to make sure I say this the right way. So this is going to be very confusing, I think, to your listeners, but maybe you will understand. As you're going through the process of what we like to call waking up, which I just call basically you're waking up to the matrix. You're born from the time you were born to this moment today. You were raised in a society that is teaching you to conscript to it. You have to realize that all of this stuff that's in this world is completely made up. It's bullshit. From the way that we structure our society to the way we make government to the way we do economics. I'm a professor of economics. I tell you, it's all bullshit. We design this however we want. We can come up with whatever we want to come up with. It doesn't have to be this way. There is no real world. We're just agreeing upon some shitty version of it. You have to wake up to that. And as you go through the stages of waking up to that, the last stage for me was the belief in God, because it creates a hierarchy. How can you be a sovereign being if you believe in a hierarchy that exists without yourself? If you are not truly in charge, if you're always asking for permission or you're always asking for favor, God, angels, whatever, please have mercy on me and come down and provide for me this gift. Okay, great. Does that work? I don't know, but that's where I'm at. I don't know. But you know what does work that I can guarantee? What actions have you put into that? What behaviors are you doing to get that gift? What work are you doing for your own manifest? How are you working with the conscious field? Okay, there are things that are scientific based that don't have to have woo woo in it. That doesn't negate the existence of a God. If there is a God or angels or other types of entities out there that are working and helping me, great. I'll take all the assistance I can get, but I'm not relying on it. It's no longer factored into my function, and I'm not subject to the authority of it. And then I had a podcast the other day with a gentleman that really struggled with this because his plant medicine journey had brought him to Christianity. And as an ex-Christian pastor, you can imagine my reaction. I was thrilled. And I was just like, okay, so I have this non-spiritual podcast, and you thought it was going to be a great idea to come up here and talk about Christianity and how you found Jesus in ayahuasca. Choices, but here we are. And so we kind of started, and when I got into this conversation, they viewed everything as from the spiritual to the physical, where I view everything from the physical to the spiritual. And my thing with that within that podcast was, well, Anthony, what do you tell people that have been trying to do this stuff for themselves this whole time? They've been working on they've been trying and they've been trying, and then they just couldn't do it on their own. And then they found God, and now they can. Okay, stop. Listen to yourself for a second. Repeat what you just said. they couldn't do it, and then they did. So they still did it. But you said that the only way that they could do it is if they believed that God could help them do it. But
Mm-hmm.
that gave them the ability to do it. And they were like, yeah. So they did it. Yeah. Okay, why don't you start there?
It's
Why don't
still
we just
they.
start there with the, like, maybe we should just self-regulate and have personal responsibility and all of these other things that come with being a sovereign being. And so I know this part of the conversation may be a turn off to a lot of the members of the audience out there. I'm not telling you that your religion is wrong. I'm just telling you that subscribing to it creates limitations and barriers. And if you really want to get to a point of personal freedom and exploration, then you have to start questioning whether or not you actually believe the things that you believe. Because for me, I'm a better Christian now than I ever was when I was a Christian. Like if I look at
Mm.
my moral compass and how I live my life and my sinning versus not sinning, oh my goodness. I am way more morally ethical now than I ever was as a Christian. And the reason why is, see, I didn't believe that shit. See, I didn't believe in all of the rules of the Bible. I didn't believe in, especially like all the way down to the sexuality. That's low hanging fruit. We've already been talking about that. The Bible teaches you that from the moment that you're born, that you are a imperfect being, that you were born into sin, that you were born, that you're the flesh is his death, and that you are sin. And the only way to get out of this corruption is through the grace and the salvation of Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. That essentially, unless this divine being who created you imperfectly can swoop in behind it and then give you enough grace to make you whole, that then and only then are you worthwhile as a person. Ooh, well, that doesn't make you feel very good about who you are. Now it already puts you in this subjective space where you feel like something's wrong with you, like you're just not okay. I am always imperfect. I am always terrible. I can never be good enough. The only way I can be good enough is if I give this space for this other hierarchical being outside of myself that I've given all this power and all this authority to make me enough. Well, that's a problem. And then they tell you all the way down to like your basic needs, like sexuality. Now, I think we have a lot of issues with sexuality. In fact, we have this spiritual prudentness that comes over here, and then we have this societal outrageousness that's over here with the sex addiction and pornography and all this. There's a center, people. There's a balance of healthy sexuality that exists that like nobody is talking about, that I do think we need to get to. But when you look at the religious side of that, then they are putting all of this space. And so it's like, well, obviously I didn't subscribe to that. I was a pastor and a porn addict. I was watching porn 20, 30 hours a week. I was constantly objectifying women. I was picturing every woman that I see naked. I couldn't even go through a sermon or be in a church without seeing a woman wearing something form fitting that I thought was attractive without sexualizing her in a pew. But don't you worry, I prayed for forgiveness for that. Okay? God forgave me. I was struggling, you see, because I can't do anything about it because I was created this way. It's
Mm.
not my fault. I'm a sinner. I'm
Mm-hmm.
imperfect. I can't stop myself from doing these things. Oh, it sounds like an excuse and victimization and then justification. Where without that, then who creates my thoughts? I do. Where does my self-responsibility come from? Me. Who determines my morality? Me. Why do I work on not objectifying women? And I'm not saying that I'm not perfect in this space. I struggle in this space still because my natural instinct is to objectify someone. I pull up at Dutch Brothers and there's some very young, attractive women there making my coffee. There's a part of my brain still that wants to look. But then this other part goes, no, how does that make them feel? Did they
Mm.
ask for that sexualization today? They're just at work doing their job. They're not asking for me to sexualize them. It is not appropriate for me to sexualize them in this space. I am in charge of myself. I am a sovereign being. It is my job in that moment to make sure that my behaviors are appropriate, not just for me, but for the protection of the people that are in my space, because they didn't ask for me to do that. Time, place, setting. And so these are the problems I think that people run into when you're giving your authority outside of yourself to a God. I don't care what God it is. I don't care what the morality is. You're giving this hierarchical being that is outside of yourself a space to control you, to be a scapegoat for you, to keep you that one layer above where you need to be to find sovereignty. And that's why I'm opposed to it. Because I don't think you can truly wake up in this space. I don't think you can truly find wholeness if you are still subscribing to these distortions that are out there. And this is one of those areas that people have to break. Because if there is a God, and I'm completely open to the idea that there might be, one thing I have learned from plant medicine, it is so dramatically different than everything that we have ever conceptually conceived as God. Why do I think that I may have met God in plant medicine? Because this is what I know. And here's my biggest problem with plant medicine. When you tell people something, you are imprinting into their subconscious, their conscious and their subconscious, of experiences or things that they may go into. When we have dreams, all of this stuff throughout your whole life, your subconscious is there. How do I know when I go into an ayahuasca vision that what I'm envisioning isn't something that was implanted into my brain, that I, like Jesus, for example? I went to have a vision of Jesus. Okay. Did you? Hey, can you be certain of that? Because you know who Jesus is. You've heard other people talk about it in podcasts and ayahuasca experiences. You are open to this idea that this was potentially going to occur. And oh, by the way, you're on this very powerful psychedelic, which is still creating hallucinations in your brain. You have to give credit for it. Like, did you meet Jesus? Or did your brain produce Jesus? Doesn't mean that the lessons learned weren't there, because your subconscious knows the lessons that you need. So it doesn't make the experience not valid, but it can't make it, you can't authenticate the experience, right? You just can't know. My experience is my very first night of ayahuasca, when I felt like I did meet God, like whatever that energy is, source energy, collective energy, I have no freaking clue. I will tell you this though, I do believe that I met something that was outside of myself, that was in scale so much larger. If I learned anything, the essence of what I am, if there is a soul, every conceptual idea that I had of God, I was in that moment. All of this idea of the God of the Bible creating the heavens and the earth and all the powers and all the expanse, and I was a fragment of whatever that larger thing was. It was so much bigger and so much more expansive and so much crazier than anything that I could have ever have conceptualized. That, oh, okay, that caught my attention. Now, also because of that, there's no way in this form I can wrap my brain around this. I really have no idea. And we won't know. And we may never know. And I don't know. I don't even want to pretend that I have the answers of what comes after or through this. But what I know for me is the awareness of the challenge of knowing doesn't do anything in my life. And that is where I think for me, it created this separation. I went through this period of spirituality where I was so into my spiritual self that I started to form this disconnect, almost like a schizophrenia. Like I started to like look at my hands, and it was like, I'm in my body. This is my physical form. How do I braid my spiritual self into my physical form? And I feel so disconnected, and I just want to be my larger self and my soul and my power. What exactly was that doing with what I want? Why I woke up this morning? What time do I have to be at work? Like, what am I having for lunch? Oh man, my kid just pissed me off 10 minutes ago. How am I going to react to that? Like, this stuff doesn't add value to your life. In fact, it takes away, because all this time that I was spending in my head in this spiritual space, in my larger self, in all of this awareness and all of this godness, I was missing my children's lives. I was missing my life. I'm missing the interaction and the dinner and the moment that I'm supposed to be in, right? I am literally missing the whole point of life. And you hear that in Christianity. I know I'm on a soapbox, but you
I
hear
love
that
it.
you hear that in Christianity all the time. You hear all these pastors, I just can't wait to die so I could go to heaven. I'm so over this. I just want this to be done, and I just want to join in the glory of my Father. Stop. Stop. What is the meaning of life? To experience. We're doing it. We're here. Even if we're souls, even if we're sovereign beings, even if we're larger conscious energies that exist beyond this place, I'm having this experience by choice. I'm having this experience purposely, and we designed this experience to be exactly what it is. I designed this experience for me to be a human animal with amnesia, to be having this conversation with you, to be learning to interact within this quantum, wonderful, conscious world that we live in. This is the experience. No part of this experience was you to wake up to what this quantum conscious world is. Your job in this experience was to be a human being, and to be a healthy one, and to be a happy one, and a fulfilled one, and to learn what comes from the fulfillment of being a human, not to be God. Because if the truth is, if we were already God, then why do we need to go be God? Because that's not what we're doing here. We were already there. We came here to have this experience, not to get back to the other one that we already left. And so I think that it's a flawed philosophy and a state of thought that people get trapped in, but it does become very dangerous to how you're practicing and living your life, and the traps become real. And so my plant medicine journey had a lot of ups and downs, and it was about a 3-year journey before I finally got to that point to where I was able to break through the religious spiritual barrier. And now I'm still obviously aware of a spiritual realm. I think that there are energies outside of ourselves. I think there may be aliens and things like that. I am open to all kinds of possibilities, but all the way down to, and I think this is an important one too, I'm all the way open to the possibilities that if I died today and I was standing in front of God and Jesus and it was just like it is in the Bible, I'm not surprised at all. Like, I'm not even going to be, oh shit, I'm going to be a little disappointed. I mean, very disappointed. But also in that moment, I want you to know that I have gained my own sovereignty enough that even if that's the reality, my answer to that is no, I don't choose you. I've read that book. Do you believe in that book? Because if you believe in that book, me and you are not aligned. Now, if you're something different and you want to explain to me how you're different and I align with that, I'm in. But if you are the God that appears in that Bible, nah, I'm out. Fuck you. And that's how I feel. I don't believe in that. I don't subscribe to it. And I think it's a terrible version of morality. And it's a sick, twisted game that's being played there. And I don't subscribe to that. So, I think that that's where you have to get to. It's like you have to choose your own morality. And if there is a God, how is it possible that we here are able to achieve a higher state of morality than the so called supreme being that is all perfect and all love? And I think that's something that needs to be questioned as well. My
It feels
soapbox.
it feels honestly, it feels to me like you're in all the words and all the stories that you've described there. It's like, oh, that's my path. That's been my path, But the God and religious God part, I feel like I gave up when I was 20, 19 or 20, around that age, when I read for the first time Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. That challenged my beliefs of what had been ingrained in me so much when I was little, of the religious God, the one that you described. If I die and this one's here, well, fuck you, because. But that was
Yeah.
challenged then, and it took me a while to outgrow that idea and that vision of God. And I also understand when you're describing how is that helping me, right, in this human existence, because I see this too. Like, a lot of people go to retreats and they go to, whether it's just meditation retreats or they have experiences or whatever path they take, but then they don't know how to take that and put it into their day-to-day lives. And
Mm-hmm.
I also see where I do that too. There have been so many areas in my life where, and I am very heady. I am so much in my head many times and thinking of this and thinking of that, and then and then exactly what you were describing, I am missing out on my life. There are
Yep.
parts where I'm like, because now I do what I've never done in my life before. I'm working a 9 to 5 day job, and then I do this, and then I have what seems to be another experience altogether, even though they're integrated and they're interconnected. And it's not like I'm a complete different person in one place or the other, because I'm still the same person even when I'm in the normal job. I am the seven head creature, when I start speaking, it's all like, what? That kind of a jazz. And at the same time, many times I wonder, how is it that I have gone to this place of working in a financial institution, which in my head is like I never saw myself working in such an environment. And at the same time, that knowing of, if I wasn't meant to be here and experiencing this now, I wouldn't be here. I would be somewhere
Mhm.
else altogether. And my purpose right now is to be here. My purpose right now is to be here, to just
Yep.
experience whatever I'm experiencing. That little thing that, I don't even know who said this, to be honest. I never remember what people say and where I hear quotes from, and I'm okay with it. But the
Yep.
lesson that comes with it of, before spiritual awakening, chop wood and fetch water. After spiritual awakening, chop wood and fetch water. It's so true.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
so fucking true. You just have a different view on things, maybe,
Hmm.
and maybe you're a bit more present, and maybe you're a bit more fully there and enjoying the human experience a bit more. Maybe
Yeah.
that's all that that does.
Yeah.
So
You mentioned something there that I had to learn through in this space was work and things that I didn't want to do. I'd always looked at those activities. It's like I just wanted to get through them so that I could get to the experiences that I wanted to be having. Because it's like I felt like I would even say things so negative as like, I'm not living life, right? I'm going to work. It's like, oh, I'm just wasting
mm,
my life away.
mm,
This is 8 hours of experience that you're having. Like, you should be looking forward to maximizing that. What can you learn at work? What can you do at work? What kind of
yeah,
lives can you touch? What kind of people can you interact? What experience are you having? This isn't wasted time. Why did we frame this in such a negative way?
yeah,
And yeah, that,
yeah.
that was a hard one. That was a mental model that took me a long time to break. And then there was a lot of layers to it. But that was one of those really enriching moments. Like when you get to the other side of that one, it's like all of a sudden you start finding all of this fulfillment and joy. Like, I go to clean the bathroom. I look forward to it. I go in there. It's like, I'm going to go deep clean the bathroom. Why? I'm going to put on a YouTube video. I'm going to jam out to some stuff. I'm going to get in my zone. Oh, by the way, cleaning is good for the soul. Like, this cleans me on the inside too. And so it's like, okay, this is my moment to where I get to just go be with me and do some work. And that's such a dramatic different approach from where I was at, where those were chores, those are terrible things. It's like, but the more you embrace the, like you said, the chop wood part, the more you get into like, yeah, this isn't
Honestly,
so bad.
yeah, when I started this job, and yesterday was a whole year of doing this. All throughout my life, I just worked different working patterns. I've never worked in an office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. This whole year, this whole past year, that's what I've done. And from the very beginning, it never felt like I'm going to work.
Hmm.
Because, and I do put this down to everything that I have discovered throughout my life up until that point of, it doesn't have to be work. It's a word that we attach to it. In my head, like you said, those 8 hours, I am going here, I'm interacting with these people. These are the exact places where I can, for lack of better words, put into practice what I have learned about myself.
Hmm.
How do I respond to things that come up when something pushes a button? Because I might have a button that I'm laying outside and somebody's pressing that button. What do I do? Do I make the same choice? Because you were talking about choices earlier, or do I do something else?
Yeah.
This is exactly where practice comes in all those silly little moments and places that we take our body through time and space into all these environments. This is where you know more about yourself and who you are and who you'll become in, and what parts of you might need to look at in a different kind of way. Where do you need to love yourself more? Because
Yeah.
this is the biggest thing for me presently. When I see or hear the judgment in my head of, oh, I'm judging that person for that, or I'm judging myself for whatever, or I'm shaming myself, guilt tripping, or whatever, can I just love that part too? Because I believe that that's the hardest thing that we can do for ourselves. Can we just love ourselves fully in all of our misery? Like, even when you were describing earlier about the things that nobody wants to talk about, all our ugly parts, we don't want to admit. You didn't want to admit that you enjoy that part, of being in war, because it represented something to you. There's nothing wrong with that. In my head, there's nothing wrong with loving that part of you. It's still a part of you. I believe that that's part of where God is. If But when I say God, it's that sun that you saw, that you were a ray of. because
Hmm.
that's how I understood God at a certain point, where I could remove the idea of the religious God and understand it differently.
Hmm.
This idea that it's a sun and we are rays. And in the ray, it's still sun. It's still the sun. So the hierarchy that you're describing, I so fully understand. Wha-
Yeah, there's a, when you were
Oh my
just
God.
speaking, I was remembered of a quote by Darius Wright, and I love his three principles. Now, I nerd out on things like construct theory. I actually think that his out of body experience and construct theory conversations are wonderful brain food. Now, I'm not going to pretend that I subscribe to them, but what I will say is, one, I've not had an out of body experience, at least long enough. I actually have, but that was a blip, and but not long enough for me to really be able to conceptualize what's going on there. And but two, he talks about fundamental laws of the universe, and one of his is you cannot have freedom of expression with the limitation. And
Mm,
that is like right there. It's like, if we're here with free will, if we have true freedom of expression and we can express however it is that we want to, well, you cannot have a limitation on that. That can be whatever that is. And that means that this idea of good and bad and all of these things that are really difficult for people, they have to go away because
mm-hmm,
they're not there. You determine that. See, you can choose to express how you want to. So if you want to be a morally upright person that behaves in a way that you define as good, then great. I really appreciate that because that makes other people's lives better. You want to express in a terrible way that most people would define as bad, I may not agree with that. I may
mm-hmm,
stand up against you for that. I may tell you that I don't like what you're doing. But the real truth is, you have the freedom to express however it is that you want to express, and so do I. And I'm just ultimately responsible for how I'm choosing to express. But I don't subscribe to these ideas as good and bad or right and wrong.
mm,
I don't
mm-hmm.
actually think that those have any place in it. I think you determine what is right and wrong for you. And then we as a society determine what's right and wrong for each other. And then those are where the subjective changes come in.
Yeah, it sounds like Joe DiMartini. I've seen him.
I don't know who
It's
he is. Hopefully that's
oh,
good.
honestly, this is exactly it, about the right and the wrong. And two conversations in a week, in the same week, I watched him and I didn't want to. It was Aubrey Marcus. I used to
Mm,
follow Aubrey Marcus to a point, and then I thought, what the fuck? It just went off my radar altogether. But then one day this thing come up with Joe DiMartini on Aubrey Marcus, and I thought, I don't like this dude, as in Aubrey Marcus, but I like Joe DiMartini. So
mhm.
they had a conversation, and Aubrey could not understand what Joe was trying to. It's John DiMartini, not Joe. Told you names.
All right.
And he was talking about the good and the bad and what's moral and what's not moral, and Aubrey was not understanding what John was coming from, and in my head it was like so obvious. And then in the same week I saw him on wellness the wellness podcast. I don't know what it's called. See, this is why YouTube is perfect right now. What's it called? Wellness and wisdom podcast. This guy.
Okay.
So I saw him on the same week on this guy's podcast, and John DiMartini was talking about the same things as he spoke on Aubrey Marcus, but because the person in front of him had a different kind of openness, it seemed like a completely different conversation, even though he was presenting the same things. And that was one of them, the good and the bad stories, and who tells you what's what. It's morality, it's all made up in us, in society, and how we
Yep.
want to choose to live this experience, because after all, like you said, we can do whatever we please somewhat.
Yeah, to a degree. And then I think, the way I look at it is, does my behavior hurt other people? And does it take away the sovereignty of other people? And as long as I can answer those within acceptable measures for myself, because obviously not all of that is avoidable, right? There are things that are going to happen whether you want it to or not, or there's going to be
Hmm.
outcomes. But you just do your best to subscribe to your beliefs and be true to yourself, and I think that's the best that anyone could hope to do.
Hmm. Wow, it's been a while since we start. I just looked at the time. It's 1 hour and 40 minutes nearly, and I
Yep.
don't like. I can't believe that's been that. do Do you want to continue this? Because I would like to hear from
I'm
you.
I'm used to shooting long podcasts. My old show, The
Cool.
Stone Days, we would sit around for like 3 hours and bullshit.
That's
So
brilliant.
I actually like the format where I'm able to fully articulate some of my thoughts, because some of these concepts are deep, and even in these hour and 40-minute conversations, it's like we've touched on so many subjects right now that I could literally give a master class of like a week on.
Mm,
They go so deep. There's so many layers. There's so many different angles that you have to look at these things through. There are so many different points of conceptualization that it's like, okay, you can introduce somebody to this, but you really can't work through this with someone. And I'm just hopeful that I say things in a way that it I want to create a moment of pause. That's all I really
mm,
look to do. If I can say something in a way that can create a moment of pause to make you stop and go, that's interesting. I should think on that. Well, that's the goal, because then that's exactly what I want to happen. I want you to go think on that. I want you to go do your own research. I want you to find out if there's any truth in what I said for you, so that you can come back and you can be like, you know what? I do agree with what that guy said, but because you agree, because you did the research and you learned. Or you could come back and be like, you know what? No, I don't agree. And this is why. But that's good, because you've done the research and you've done the work. Those are the spaces that we've got to get back to, where I think we rely too heavily on quote unquote experts, and we rely
mm,
too
mm.
heavily on certifications and credentials. It's like, you know what? Some of the best information I've ever had in my life has come from children. They didn't have any credentials at all. Like, they have some best life advice that's ever been out there, and we've given all of our power away to these quote unquote authorities, and it's really what it's done is it's killed our ability to think for ourselves, and to think critically, and to think rationally, and there's just very little of that happening today. So I would love to continue the conversation.
Oh, I'm glad to hear. I'm glad to hear because what you described there just now, the taking everything for face value. Let's say, somebody has a podcast, right? And they're well known
Hmm.
and they have a following. So it means they must know better than me, right? Because I am nobody and I'm at the beginning of my journey, let's say, and I don't know. Example, right? As an example. And I've noticed the more you go into this, the deeper you go into it, the more you realize that, hold on a minute, I have my own authority. I have my own filters. I have my own processes. I don't necessarily have to believe everything that's being presented to me and to make it my own. That's not the path that I want to walk now, though. The path that I want to walk on now is, after all the things that you've shared in today, I don't even know what you do. Like, what is it? What is it that you do with people, with other
Well,
people
yeah.
on
So
their path?
yeah, I try to be a guide, and I try to help people. So I work with people with, like, my favorites are the introduction to plant medicine. I really like to find people who don't know much about plant medicine, or if they do know something about plant medicine, they're coming into it from the DARE program space. Drugs are bad. This is your brain on drugs. And because that's where I came from. I came from that space where I was terrified of drugs, and I only reason I started cannabis was to heal some prostate issues that I was having, and that it was the failure of the modern medical system that had occurred that led me to the pathway to be open to try the alternative therapy. And then opening my mind to the cannabis was the, like, beginner primer for, like, opening my space to other things. But when I started doing cannabis, like, I quit drinking and I quit smoking, and, like, it started having all of these positive impacts. And then I learn to work with the medicine over time. And so I like to take people that are coming at this from, like, point zero. Those are my favorites, because what I do is you work with the individual, you kind of evaluate, like, where they're at in life, and then you look at your own experiential points. And I try not to work with people outside of my experiential skill sets, because if I don't have something to relate, like addiction. I can relate to addiction. I was a porn addict, a heavy porn addict. I was an alcoholic. I can relate to addiction. So yeah, maybe I haven't been hooked on fentanyl, but I understand the science behind it and I understand the brain process for addiction, and we can talk about that. But there are segments I cannot, for example, talk to a woman and help her heal from that patriarchal wound, because
Mm.
I cannot experientially relate to that. So those types of conversations, I refer out to people that are within my network that I feel it's like, maybe you should have a conversation with this other person. But I like to educate people on the medicine first and foremost. I like to try to set up what would be a non spiritual path, a biological understanding of what the medicine is. Why do we call it medicine? How is it actually working? Oh, by the way, here's all these other pharmaceuticals that started as a plant base. Here's the research. Here's Dr. Joshua Siegel's research on psilocybin and neurotrophy and neuroplasticity and uh, different modalities of psychedelics that he has worked on, and these are the colleges that he's worked at. And so I really get into the science-based approach of like really understanding what is the medicine that you are dealing with, and then building the proper cognitive, behavioral, psychological tools. I like to put people through a pre-integration to like a medicine sit. So maybe they'll do like a microdosing course. Let's say, if we assume for this that they're not sitting with a medicine that requires a dieta like ayahuasca. Like you wouldn't
Hmm.
want to mix psilocybin with ayahuasca or other things, because there is physical properties to that medicine that you don't want to overdose on when you go to have your sit, right? You don't want these alternative effects. You don't want to be doing a ton of caffeine, things like that. So but let's say they're going to sit with psilocybin. So what I would probably do is start them with like a microdosing program, and then they get an introduction to medicine. We're establishing a good scientifically based foundation for what the medicine is, how they could expect to work with it. We're teaching them what's happening in their brain, what is your default mode network, what happens when
Mm.
your default mode network happens, what's going on in your frontal cortex, what is your frontal cortex control, how is this working between your right brain and your left brain, what are the four characters, how, okay, well, here's Joe Bolte Taylor's book on whole brain living, right? These are the four characters that are in your mind. This is how you have to work to cultivate, to develop them. And then we don't necessarily address trauma. We address where you're at and starting to develop the foundational tools so that you can open up and discover what it is that you need to work on, because that internal personal discovery is for you. I can't tell you what to start with or where to go, but I can give you the tools that'll help you discover it. And so we'll do like this microdosing program. We'll work through all these cognitive, intellectual behaviors and techniques. There's 7 of those. And then we get to the end of that, and that person we'll do a short dieta. Usually I do very traditional medicine. So I love the ceremony of it. I don't know if it needs to be done this way, but I just love it. So I like to clear space and the palo and the sage. And, I do it. I love the theater of it, but the theater of it has traditional practice to it, and it's also something I really enjoy, and that's what I'm here to enjoy my experiences. So I'm going to enjoy my experience with this. But we go into the medicine sit, so we'll do like a 3-day build up to where you're setting intentions. You're working with other plants and modalities, and then you sit with the medicine, and then from there we have this post integration that occurs, because one of the best pieces of advice that I have ever been given came from an ayahuasquero, and he says integration starts when you get on the road to leave. And it was just like, oh man, yeah, the pink mist doesn't help you when you get back home and it's time to clock into work. Like, and that's where I discovered a lot of people were getting caught. And so really getting this robust post integration that is designed to build a community. And so what we're building on the back end of this is a community of storytellers, so that everybody who's went through this journey and experience is now taking their flag to be able to move and help others, because you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to tell anybody what to do. You just need to share your story. What did you do? And if something that I did or something that you did could help someone else, great. That's great. If it doesn't, then we're not meant for them. But I don't need to have 15 letters behind my name for you to take the time to listen to the words that are coming out of my mouth, because none of that means anything. There's no value in that. And if we are waiting for these super credentialed people to save the world, well, then what are the rest of us going to be doing? I don't want to wait around for them. I'd rather be a part of that change. And that's kind of what we're doing, is we're building this community of storytellers to start building this up, because I want everybody to do what I'm doing. Nothing I'm doing is proprietary. I'm not doing anything in a way that nobody else can't replicate. You know,
Mm-hmm.
do I sell coursework? Do I sell facilitation? Do I sell products? Yes, I do. Why? These are years of my life and education that went into this. This is my time. Like, this is a modality that I have learned a lot of experiential expertise in. And I have to be compensated for the things that I do. But I don't believe that it's necessary for everyone. If you want to just listen to my podcast, I'm going to share all the same information with you on my podcast. You're just not going to get that personalized, streamlined service that you're going to get when you decide, oh, I'm going to sign up for this microdosing program, or I'm going to sign up for this coursework that you're doing, or this recovering from religion. You know, I got a course I've been developing that's based on the recovering from religion standpoint. But these are optional things for people. They're not part of, like, that's not just what I do. Like, if I don't
Mm-hmm.
sell anything, great. That means I'm helping people. If I do sell a ton of things, great. I'm helping people and I'm helping myself. So that seems like a good, mutually beneficial relationship. And so that's kind of where we're at. And then we just sit with people. Sometimes we'll introduce people to medicine softly with, like, Hape. I think Hape is a great opener, doing a cannabis Hape ceremony. I'm in the process of developing some coursework on cannabis work. I think cannabis is one of those very powerful plant medicines that has a lot of different modalities that you can apply to your day-to-day life, from meditation to stretching to different types of cognitive behavioral therapies and techniques. Like, cannabis can be more than just getting high. And that is, I think, what a lot of people misunderstand. And so we're building on that side, helping people with the medicine space and learning how to start using these medicines. I hit my head. I had a concussion a few weeks ago. No worries. Like, that's what the psilocybin's for. Like, immediately went into the microdosing, immediately went into a bigger sit. I just took 3 grams like a week ago. Why? Because I'm trying to recover from that head injury. These medications have different modalities that just aren't like, oh, does that mean that I was sitting on a mat and working on my childhood wounds? No, it didn't. It just means I did 3 grams and sat around a fire and had a really good evening, and I was letting my brain heal, because that's all I wanted. I just wanted my brain to heal. I wasn't there to do work that night. And if the medicine determined I was going to do work, I would. Thankfully, it didn't. It allowed me to sit there on a fire and have a good time with my family and enjoy my experience and really enjoy my space. And I think that is the important part of this space, is like teaching people that this medicine is medicine, and it's here to be used in a variety of different ways. It can serve more than just this one modality. It's not just to help you heal from your childhood wounds. It's also something that is helping your body become healthier. It is physically healing you. Cannabis physically healed my prostate issues. I don't have prostate cancer and other things today because of my work with cannabis. That had nothing to do with my relationship with God. That had everything to do with the physical properties of cannabis and how the cannabinoids interact and how my cannabinoid receptors interact, and the other behaviors and things that I've done with my diet, my nutrition. Because again, it's not a magic pill. Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is holistic. I approach this from mind, body, spirit. I look at nutrition. I look at how are you eating? What type of toxics and chemicals and poisons are you putting in your body? What does your nutritional profile look? How clean are you living? How clean are you eating to your natural state of being? How clean are you, or how are you looking at your physical working out? I've developed this primal philosophy on health, where I look at the body's primal behavioral characteristics and then formulating physical programs and nutritional programs based on what I believe best match our primal instincts, right? The foundation of how our body was designed to work. So I work with light and I work with sound. I also believe in the quantum consciousness of this space and the quantum reality that we live in. I also believe that as a quantum consciousness, I am capable of interacting and influencing the quantum field that I exist within. That may sound woo woo to a lot of people. To me, it sounds like a lot like science, and I'm trying to learn how to do that. I have done that very successfully so far. and some things that are just, I'll give you a example. We talked earlier about the business sale. I had a short conversation about one day I would like to sell the business, and my wife and I had sit down in the evening and kind of conceptualize what that would look like. And then I made one action after that, where I had told the person that I was interested in selling the business to that in a few years, I think I'm going to be ready to have this conversation, and I would like to start building the groundwork and foundation for it now. Because it was a relatively large sale, and for them would have been a big undertaking. It would not have been a like overnight decision.
Hmm.
And within months, within like 3 months of that conversation, that business sale came. And just the other day, I found out that where we live, we have a real rattlesnake issue in the state of Oregon, and I had no clue. I've lived with rattlesnakes in Colorado in the mountains in Missouri, but apparently we have a real issue here. And so we were sitting around, actually on our shroom night, which was kind of funny, and we were talking about getting the rattlesnake wrangler training, and we were going to look up finding a trainer, getting the dog out there so that the dog doesn't gets the shock treatment and therapy so that it doesn't. I would much rather my dog get shocked by electric than bit by a rattlesnake. Like, this makes sense. And so I thought, okay, let's look into this. Then yesterday, 2 days later, no follow up, no follow through, no nothing. The Our town, we've seen a flyer for it. Our town is having a snake wrangler come to our town next weekend for $125, delivered, done. Here you go. I don't have to go look for it. I don't have to search for it. And yeah, does that sound a little kooky and a little woo woo? Is that just coincidence? I think so. There's a lot of that, but I also understand how quantum consciousness works. I also understand how the quantum field works. I also understand the law of attraction. I also understand things like what it means to create voids. And I did all of those things in that particular quote unquote manifest. And then it materialized. So I do have a certain part of me that believes that we are capable of materializing realities into our present. It takes work, takes effort. A lot of people would just call that hard work, call that hard effort, call that coincidence, call that whatever. But when you are performing these experiments regularly and you are doing them consistently and you are yielding the results consistently, it doesn't matter if it's anecdotal or not, you're experiencing the results. So why wouldn't you want to continue to learn more? And so I do spend some time in that space. Now, unfortunately, I don't teach in that space because, I don't. I don't have any way of proving that. I can only look at my life and what I believe and how those things are impacting me and what I believe is possible through the power of my beliefs. But that is very much a big part of the practice personally. And that is something that I do a lot with. I work with water. I set intentions. I set intentions into water. I believe that water can be programmed and it's intelligent. I believe the DNA is intelligent and the DNA can be programmed. One of the reasons why I'm a little disappointed that I didn't procreate later in life, I wish I would have done it after I reached this level of awareness and understanding, because now I understand what type of genetic coding I would be passing down. Instead,
Mm.
I passed down the genetic coding of the person that I was at that time in my life when I just chose to have children, which is probably why some of my children are struggling with the things that they are, because I was passing down that generational trauma through my DNA, which means that there we go with this woo woo term, generational trauma. But now we have a scientific purpose. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. Because
Yes.
as you're talking about the DNA, I have so many other questions, but this one just popped. That's There's such a thing as entanglement, right? And in my head, as
Yes.
you're describing, because I was thinking so many things when you were talking about your children, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense why I don't live with my kids right now, even though they're still young. But it makes sense, like the trauma that I passed on to them. I never knew that part with the DNA part. But then as I'm thinking that, I thought, if entanglement is real, which I totally believe because you're talking quantum now,
Hmm.
then doesn't that mean that if something happens here and happens there, doesn't that mean that the DNA that you transmitted, if it's changing in you, can it not change into your children?
I don't I don't believe so. And I think I can see where you're coming from with that. I do think that for whatever reason, this material plane that we are on has specific rules that we are um, co-witnessing. Okay. And in order for
Mm.
this to work, it takes a certain level of co-witness and a certain level of agreement to this space, this material space. Um, I believe personally, and we could talk about this if you want me to explain it a little bit more. I believe that we are very much experiencing a conscious hallucination. I do think that
Hmm.
this is very similar to like the simulation theories. I just don't think this is aliens on the other side of it with a computer. I think that this is consciousness that is generating this hallucination, no different than a dream. We are living a very tactile, real dream. But the real truth is there is no spoon. So, but unfortunately, we do still have some things. Like I woke up today and my cells were all together and my DNA was working and everything. We have certain things that we have conscripted to that allow this material plane to function the way that it does. So quantum entanglement, yes, I do think it's real, but I don't think, can I energetically be tied to another human? Yes. This is one of the reasons why I caution people with open and promiscuous sexuality. It has nothing to do with the morality of the behavior. It has everything to do with the energy sharing of the behavior and what that means. And that's why I'm very cautious about who I touch, who I give hugs to. I don't want to entangle my energy with those people, and I have made mistakes in that at periods of my life to where I do feel like when we hear people talk about like I feel like that person is with me. I feel like that person's spirit is there. Yes, I think that that is some type of quantum entanglement. You know, when somebody halfway across the world has a thought and that enters me, yeah, I think that because I believe that we are connected on a unified quantum field of energy that is conscious,
Hmm.
yeah, that person in England that has that thought, and then that thought comes into my brain, 100% that is entanglement and real. But where I think we get into the biological DNA, the programming, the cellular structures, the physiology of that, yeah, I think that there is going to be some limitations there. Do I think that that expression can change? Yes, but I think they can only change their expression through their quantum consciousness in their own physical body. I don't believe that we have the power to change other people's physical expression.
A
And so
hundred
this
percent.
this comes into the question of like certain types of healing, right? I don't know. I think if I like laid hands on you in an energetic way, I could aid in your healing, or I could quantum consciously entangle with you to help with that. I think that we see results of that in lots of religions, right? The laying of hands with prayer, quantum intention, things of that nature. But at the end of the day, I don't think I can, I do not think it's possible for one human being consciously, energetically only, to put hands on another person. Let's say you have a broken arm. I don't think I can turn that arm to healed unless you believe
The
that to be
receiver.
possible. And
Yep.
then you create those results through your own quantum consciousness and the sovereignty that you have over your expressive being. Because I think part of our free will is I cannot impose those types of things upon you, and you cannot impose those types of things upon me. That's why energetically we are sovereign. And so these are really high level concepts that probably are confusing a lot of people. Like, maybe your audience is like all
But
gurus. I
listen,
have no
listen,
idea.
listen. In my
But
head right now, other people don't even matter. Like in my head, there is no such thing as other people. Right
there,
now, it's you and me in front of this, whatever you're on. I'm on my laptop. I don't know what you're on. You
I'm the
could be
same
on
thing.
your.
I thought we were just having a conversation this morning. So I
That's
literally,
what we're having. That's
I
what
am like,
we're doing.
I am 2 minutes out of bed. Like this is my bed beard. I have not done any prep work. I put a hat on and a
Listen,
hoodie and
listen.
I sat down.
We have spoken about all things human and all things metaphysical in here today. To me, this is the greatest thing. I love so much the fact that I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I when I said let's get into this call, because I love this part. I love the surprise of it. I love the organic feeling of it, and I don't do this as much for other people as many times I do it for myself.
Yeah.
My own selfish needs. Okay,
Well,
as
I
much
think
as I love that the bigger part of it when I started doing this was the mediator.
Mhm.
The person that's, if somebody has a voice that's gonna be heard and there's somebody else in the world that needs to hear that voice, and it's gonna come through this, hell yeah. And then there's
Yes.
the part of who the heck knew I was gonna have so many things that feel like they're healing within me as I hear you talk. Who knew that was going to be a bypass of all of this?
I
So,
think this is a great example of quantum entanglement and the law of attraction right here, because I didn't know you at all. You had put a post on Facebook. I responded to the post. I'm trying to promote my own channel and trying to get my information out there. And so I thought, what a great opportunity to be a guest on your podcast. And I come with some neat accolades. So I thought, okay, well, I can garner some attention. So I probably will get a comment back. And so I did. And then you were like, yeah, let's do it in 10 a.m. And I was like, okay, great. Well, I'm going to have a conversation. Then we're going to schedule a show. We're going to go on to the show. But I do think it's really important. Like, this is where I think anecdotal evidence, my beliefs in this space are kind of on the fringe. I am not part of the popular sect of spirituality and plant medicine. My beliefs, I'm an outsider in this space. I piss a lot of people off. I'm kind of divisive in this space.
Hell
The
yeah.
fact that and knowing that going into this, I was a little nervous when we started our conversation because I had no idea where you were. I hadn't done enough show research on you at this point. I would have for the next show, but I did not done enough show research on you to know whether we were aligned or not. I felt like this was going to be an alignment conversation.
Mm.
And the fact that I can be so far outside of the norm, and yet our energies still attract. And then through that law of attraction, not only do we share similar beliefs, but we have healed through similar traumas. We've come through similar spaces. We have similar ideas about how we're going to promote this message and how we're trying to help people and how this conversation at large is working. I don't know, obviously it's very hard to put that in a scientific experiment,
Yeah.
but you can't deny it. And that's what got me out of atheism. I was an atheist for many years. After I left the church, I resigned as a pastor and I became an atheist. And then eventually I got to the point to where I kind of woke up to this whole spirituality thing because it's like it was taking more faith to deny it. It would take more faith for me to deny the absolute interconnection that we are having right now and the purposeful alignment of this interaction than it would be for me to just try to explain it than to just accept it for what it is. If I was going to explain that away, that takes some effort. Like, yeah, a lot of coincidences, a lot of this, a lot of that, other than I can just accept it. But what I have grown to is I no longer try to define it. I
Mm-hmm.
know something is happening there. I
Mm-hmm.
can conceptualize how I think that's happening, but I don't put any weight on the definement of it because it doesn't matter and I don't care. The results are happening whether I understand it or not. As long as I'm getting results, who really cares?
Yeah.
Do I need to
And
know, was it an angel? Did the angel Gabriel come and tap you on the shoulder and tell you to message me? I have no idea. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
yes.
You still
Yes.
did, and we're still here. And
Yeah.
so that I think is the other thing too. You have all these people out there that are in this space that they're wanting to start experimenting, but they're afraid they're going to do it wrong. Like,
Yeah.
guys, you can't do this wrong. You just
or
can't.
or having a plan or having questions or keep your pen. I have a pen on here for other reasons because I have a list in here of something else I'm doing. I'm not writing down things. I don't have questions on the pipeline. I don't have an agenda. I don't want to. If it feels aligned, that's it. That's all I need.
Yep.
That's all I need. And if like all throughout this conversation, I have been so zoned in, like everything that you're speaking on, I'm like, oh my God. I don't I like my it feels like my whole entire world, all my cells, all my DNA is being rearranged. Because we were talking about DNA. All of
Well,
it. It's
maybe I'm wrong about this entanglement thing. I don't. I'm open to
I
that.
seriously, when I asked the question, I have never thought of that, to be honest. I
Mm,
did have a little bit of a fragment of this idea that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. So whenever you change something, it's you. You're the common denominator of your own life. So you obviously cannot change anybody else, but change happens in others when you change yourself as well. So with that thought process, I thought if I change something within me, there's two options actually. One of them, the other person just drops and goes away completely and continues to be whatever they were being before, or something shifts in them too and they change as well. So
mhm,
even this idea, when you change something within yourself now in the present moment, you change your future as much as you change your past. So it goes both ways. So with that thought in mind, this happened in fractions of seconds in my head, by the way. So then with that thought in mind, that's where that question came from of
mhm.
if change happens in both directions, can it happen in the DNA, in the things that we've transferred to our kids? And honestly, I didn't ask it thinking that you're going to have an answer for it. I asked it because I asked myself that question too in that moment. Go on.
Earlier, you had talked about the past changing. I actually just listened to a great podcast, one of the last AJY files, with this basement episode. He had oh, let me. Oh, I don't want to get this guy's name wrong. He deserves credit for this.
Dude, I got so many names wrong today, so it's fine.
Yeah, I just downloaded his book. I haven't got to read it yet, but I would listen to his podcast, and it was Rizwan Virk. He
Oh,
wrote
wow,
a
never
book
heard of it.
called The Simulation Hypothesis, and he presents a really interesting argument in there where I think construct con what's that word, constructurally, maybe that's the right word, maybe it's not, but I think he promotes a really good argument about like how things might actually be constructed, like how they're mechanically working, right? We talk about simulated hallucination, right, or conscious hallucination. I think there is really something to what he's promoting, and he uses the double slit experiment to argue that that time, well, one, time is part of the observer effect. We only have time because we are here to observe it, and it is the observer that is creating the illusion of time, or the concept of time. Time doesn't exist without an observer. And so when you start to realize this, that you realize that in the moment of observation, you are then possibly creating entangled moments that is actually changing the past. Because just like the electrons, you cannot position an electron. It does not appear until you look for it, until you choose to observe it. It has no static space, place, or time. So what he's thinking might be happening with the Mandela effect and things like that is that that when decisions are being made in the now, that those factors that are leading up to that decision haven't actually occurred yet quantumly, because nobody had chosen to observe it. And so we're getting micro past variant changes that's resulting from present day decisions. So it is true that potentially, according to quantum science and the research that's coming out, that our present decisions are actually capable of really changing the past. And that he thinks that this is what's creating some of those anomalies that we're seeing
Mandela.
with these observer effects. And I thought, interesting, very interesting. And when you were talking earlier, I just wanted to share that. I think it's great though, because this is law of attraction, and this is manifested action. Like, I live in Oregon. You're in the United Kingdom, I think.
Yeah,
And like, holy shit, could we not be further apart if we tried?
yeah,
Like, we're literally almost like on opposite sides of the world, like, actually.
yeah.
And you put that manifest out, and I answered because I felt, for whatever reason, a similar attraction. And there's no way that I could have anticipated the conversation. In fact, much of what we've spoken about today, I haven't even spoke about on my channel yet. My channel has been very new. I shut down my old show, which my old show was like relatively successful. Like, I think at our peak we had like 33,000 listeners. We weren't huge, but I was big enough that like we had a little bit of notoriety and some recognition. We had a decent fan base, and then I shut that down kind of out of the blue 2 years ago, and I'm so glad I did. I was not the person that I needed to be in this space at that time. But I've just launched this new show, and I've been doing it really slow. Before it was like with the old podcast, it was like every Friday we're going to have an episode, everything we're going to do this. And this one, it's like completely different. It's almost lethargic in its nature. It's like I'm really letting it evolve organically, and I'm sitting on things. It's like I'll have a show idea or have a conceptualization. Let's see if I still feel this way 2 weeks from now. And if that means that a video doesn't come out 2 weeks from now, that's fine. Because it's really, to me, it's more about the quality of the content and what is being shared. And, this, like we've discovered in this conversation, this is a very in-depth, dynamic, multiple discipline conversation that involves lots of layers and training and education. Where do you start? Like that is the hardest one, right? Okay, I want to help somebody. How?
Uh-huh.
Where the hell do we start? Like, do we attract? Do we go after nutrition first? Do we deal with like mental health issues? Do I just sit you down with the medicine? Like, where is the good starting point? Like, exactly how are we going to engage in these conversations so that I can help you? And that has been the challenge with the podcast. I shot a series of these foundational episodes, which are basically me just being an educator. Like, I'm just being a teacher, and I'm sharing these philosophy things. But then you want to do this in a way that you're trying not to indoctrinate too, right? Because I'm not educating, I'm sharing. I'm sharing education that I've received, but I'm not trying to tell you how to think or believe or what to do. I'm just
Yeah.
saying this is what I did, and I believe strongly in these things, and that I think is where the challenge comes in, is to say, for me, these are deeply held subscripted beliefs. How do I present that to you in a way that lets you understand that those are deeply held conscripted beliefs and why I feel the way that I feel, but also not present that in a way that makes you feel like I'm telling you how you should think or how you should feel? Because I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to indoctrinate you. I want to educate you. I want to present something to you that creates a moment of pause, like we talked about earlier, and then I want you to reflect. And so it's been a little bit of a challenge, and I'm so grateful for the conversation today, because really, honestly, many of the subjects we've talked about today have been very fresh in my world, and these are actual, like, literally. I had 3 podcasts that I shot last week, and the first podcast was with a really good friend of mine, Father Mark Bezota. He is a 30-year ordained Catholic priest, and he is like my best
Nice.
friend, my brother, and my mentor. And people that are listening are like, this guy hates religion. He's an ex-pastor, and what do you mean? Is his best friend's a 70-year-old priest? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have a great relationship, and he supports all my things, and I support all his things, and it's wonderful. And we have a shared communicative language that we can use too, right? Because I can communicate using the Bible, but I was a little worried about that because we use that language in the podcast, and then I thought, okay, well, I don't want people to think that I'm trying to share a religious message here, even though I'm using this to communicate these expressions or these ideas or concepts. And so I was a little taken back. And then I sit down the following day with another individual who was a plant medicine practitioner that we talked about earlier. And I got blindsided by Christianity, like literally the next day. And it's like, oh, okay. Okay. Well, this is a lot. And then I had a third podcast that week. And then, as you would imagine, same direction. So all 3 shows that I thought I was going to have for like 3 weeks of content, I now have sitting on a shelf in the project room, and I haven't released an episode in like a week or two. But where that's different is in this space is I'm so much more cautious about curating my content now. I'm so more cautious about making sure that I am expressing myself authentically and I'm delivering a real message, and I don't want it to be confusing. And
Can I
so,
can I just say something before you continue
please,
there?
please.
Can you imagine that no matter what you do, people are gonna understand it whichever way they're gonna understand it?
I know. I'm trying.
It doesn't matter how hard you try and how much you want it to be this and you want people to understand this. It doesn't matter. You can be so clear in your message, and people are still gonna hear whatever they're gonna hear.
You are 100% right. Yeah. And I needed that reminder, actually. Thank you for that. That that was a
and and
real
and the,
time moment of perception correction.
come
I
into
love that.
Jesus, come into
Yeah,
Jesus
I needed
moment.
that.
Honestly, because we were talking about judgment and how I catch myself judging myself or judging others. Of course, if you've got a little bit of niggly bits with Christianity, to me it's like so obvious that you had 3 guests.
Well,
To me, it's like so obvious. Of
I,
course, you're
I,
gonna have people that are gonna talk about Christianity.
I have been I have been struggling with this space where I've not been wanting to be divisive. In my old podcast,
Mm.
I was kind of well liked and well received. I was the what do you call it when somebody is kind of like the lead singer of a group podcast? That's kind of where I was at, right? I was the
The
face of the
lead
show.
singer.
And so I had a certain level of like fans. Like it sounds weird to say that out loud. Like when I say I have fans, like I actually did. Like there were people that really loved my content. They wore my t-shirts and they were like, Reverend, and I never experienced anything like that. Even if it was on the tiniest of scale, it was a completely different experience. And then starting the Burning Bear, I thought I was going to bring a lot of my old audience with me and a lot of my old network that I had connected with, and I was really clearly shown almost immediately that that isn't going to happen. And then I also realized that because I am kind of on the fringe in this spiritual plant medicine space, in this personal development space, my approach to this is dramatically different than what you're going to hear from the Aubrey Marcuses of the world, right? And somebody who subscribes to, I met a guy the other day. We had a great, wonderful conversation, and then he comes out at the end and he tells me he's with Teal Swan, and I'm like, oh, that's a cult. Great shit. Okay, now I know I have to deal with the Teal Swan cult part of this guy, right? These are challenging spaces sometimes, but unfortunately that is the reality of this space. And I have deliberately worked my way out of these spaces to where, like, does Teal Swan have great information? Yeah, she does. She has some really good stuff. I listen to it. Underneath all that, though, I really do think she's running a cult. Like it really looks like one. And there are things that need to be expressed there. I could be wrong, but I'm just sharing how I feel. And I've realized now that I'm going to be more of a divisive figure in this space, and I'm going to actually end up kind of starting over where I'm getting rid of that old network and I'm leaving those fans behind. And that has been really challenging because I'm not used to that. I liked being loved. I liked being liked. It felt good to have fans. Now I'm getting known for the opposite of that, which is like, oh, well, people are disagreeing with me, or they're calling me crazy, or they're not subscribing to the things, or they're getting angry with me because I'm challenging things that they believe. And it's like, well, how can you tell me my God is not real? Sorry, buddy. I'm not telling you that. I'm just telling you that I don't believe that, and then it's up to you to determine whether you believe that or not. And so it's been a ride so far. Like this has
Yeah,
been the hardest undertaking I've tried in this space, and I love to talk, obviously. So this has been such a blessing to be able to get onto your show and to be able to have this conversation like this, because this afforded me the opportunity to just address so many topics that have been at the front and center of what we have been struggling with over the last couple of weeks and even months. And man, to be able to get this here out of the blue is just like, whoa, what a beautiful what a beautiful thing that occurred energetically here. Universe,
mm-hmm.
whatever you want to call it. I just call it energy, right? But the
Yeah,
energy
yeah.
aligned, and this created this beautiful thing that's occurred. And man, I'm grateful for it. And I'm
Oh my
grateful to have
God, me
met
too.
you. I can't
Me
wait
too.
to continue working with you in the future. I think that what you're doing and your beliefs and your own growth is very impressive. I haven't personally met too many people that share my beliefs and or my philosophies on things, and that's been a little eye-opening in this conversation, is to see somebody who's actually worked through some of that stuff on their own. And it's like, oh wow, okay, well, maybe there's others like you. Like
I
maybe I'm not all alone in this, because man, I feel like such an island all the time. Like,
same,
oh
fucking same. Oh
yeah,
God. So many things in there that I want to touch on, and I'm gonna share out of my experience, because there's a part of me that wants to tell what I see, because
do it.
I have noticed this is what I have to work with myself as well. When I have a person on here that shares something that I don't necessarily subscribe to, so they might be on a different path or on a different stage of their journey than what I'm at. In my head, the one thought that comes in is, I'm going to put this out and people are going to associate that with me. They're going to believe that I am that person too. And then I thought, oh, the easy way out of that is to do what a lot of podcasts I've noticed do: put a disclaimer at the beginning. That would be something to cover it. But then also, I have to work in my head the thought of, if the person that's on my podcast talks about something, it doesn't mean that I am that person too.
Right.
Because I can still hold space. I might not resonate with what you have to share, but that doesn't mean that your voice is not going to be heard by somebody else that's at the stage that you're at.
Mm,
Like, I've had quite a few people, and you and my previous guest, the one episode that came out this Tuesday, I believe that that woman was so embodied into what she was doing into this world, her niche and her avenue. She was walking, talking proof of it. And I don't know whether everybody can see this or not, but I believe that I can see this in people. And when
mhm.
somebody talks about something, I can tell whether they're actually talking out of experience or they're just talking out of what they read or heard somebody else talk about or picked up from somewhere. It's not embodied. This
Yeah.
woman was so bloody embodied in what she was talking about. And I love that because it feels grounded, it feels level, it feels whatever. I also have had people on my podcast. I guess one of them I haven't even actually put out, because she was talking about, she was a Reiki practitioner. Nothing against Reiki, and we
Mhm.
touched a little bit about healing and whatever, and I totally believe that part. Like, you cannot heal somebody else. You can channel energy, let's say, if the other person is not receptive towards it, and if they don't believe that that's going to affect them, it's not going to affect them, it's not going to work. But back to the conversation, this lady was a Reiki practitioner, and she was talking and I was listening, and I was like, it was the exact opposite of where I was at the moment. And I thought, I just cannot do this. And I had one of those moments of, do I speak this out to her or do I just shut up and continue with the podcast? And I was like, no. And it wasn't necessarily that it went against my beliefs, but it just didn't feel flowy at all. And it
Mhm.
felt like there was something else in there that just didn't feel natural and organic and authentic. I think this is what I really like about people, when
Mhm.
they're very much in their authenticity. And I have, through the guests that I've had on here, it's kind of been a reflection of where I'm at on my path too, because many times I believe there's a little bit of that as well.
Mhm.
So lately, this lady and now you just reflect a bit more of where I'm at, which I'm so fucking grateful for, to be honest. Because at a certain point, I thought, oh, am I just here? But no, because at the same time, I can see where the other people are at. And I can also see that other people might benefit from what this person has got to say. So,
Mhm.
in a really long kind of a fashion of a story there, that makes sense to me. When there's somebody in front of me that I don't necessarily agree with what they say, it doesn't mean that it's me. It doesn't mean that the people that follow me, let's say, are going to believe something about me.
Mhm.
They're going to believe whatever they want to believe anyway. There's going to be other people that are going to really enjoy whatever the other person is saying, and they're going to learn from it and do whatever they want to do with it.
Oh, thank you for that. You have no idea how much I needed to hear that. Like you obviously have messages for me, and that was very
as
impactful.
as you did for me.
That I have been spending the last several days really wrestling with some of these concepts, and that
Mm,
what you just touched on, especially the beginning part of that, and allowing the messages to resonate with people as they are, and that you are not subscribed and you don't have to be affiliated with those beliefs. Holy cow, like that hit hard, like really
mm.
hard. That was a real moment, like wow, like I really needed to hear that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome, and
Yeah.
thank you for whatever you've had your part into this. To be honest,
Yeah, and that hit hard. Wow.
I can tell. But honestly,
Mm.
I believe that this whole conversation has been very healing both ways, and you still haven't shared why burning bear. But take
Why
a moment,
burning bear? All right.
if you need to take a moment first.
No, this is gonna get definitely not PG-13. But uh I am a middle-aged 40-year-old man who happens to be pretty fit. And I know you can't really tell in my wonderful attire, but I hadn't always been this way. I started out 6 years ago. I was in the beginning of a health stage journey, but I was very um, very overweight. Like I was 5'6" tall. I was 230 something pounds. I was wearing a size 42 pant. I was very not healthy. And I have worked over the years to really kind of develop that. And then I've also learned an appreciation for things that I hadn't necessarily enjoyed. So I started to really get into fashion, and I started to really understand like how to dress. And, again, you wouldn't see this right now, my morning beard, but, I started getting into some of these things, and I lived in the Midwest United States, which has a monoculture. And that monoculture, unfortunately, and this is going to sound derogative, and I don't mean it to be this way. There's plenty of wonderful people that live in this culture, but it's very masculine dominated, and it's very overcompensating, and like everything is gay. And you don't want to be gay. Like everything is very anti-gay. So it's like if you wear this color, you're gay. If you dress like this, you're gay. If you act like this, oh, you shower, you're gay. Like that is Midwest culture. And so as I started making these changes, as I started paying attention to fashion, as I started dressing more, as I started doing things like face care routines, and I'm talking to people about some of the stuff that I'm doing, and it's like all of a sudden now it's like, dude, you're gay. 100% gay. You wear fragrance. You take showers. You clean yourself. You care about like what you wear. Like you put together outfits. Like you are so gay. And so then ipso facto, so now I've learned to believe to become. I would like to consider myself a smart dress man. Like I have a little bit of class in my style, and I believe that I've at least found like an authentic identity and a look. Like I realize, like we talked about earlier, about we choose how we want to express to the world. Well, my identity, understanding how I create characters, I have crafted this identity that I want to share to the world, and I realize in doing that I am very much a bear. Like I come off as a bear to a lot of people. Most people that meet me, they think that I'm like some super bearded masculine version of a gay man, and they're usually shocked when I have a wife, right? And so we have these two. This is the lack of diversity in St. Louis, Missouri. But in St. Louis, Missouri, we had these two friends that were homosexual, and the one guy, I would help him work on his Jeep because I'm a Midwestern guy, so like I know how to do work on cars and do stuff. Like I grew up in that generation, so like I do carpentry and I do all these super masculine things that he really appreciated. And so we after the first couple of times of coming over and working on his Jeep, I kind of realized in this space that I may be man candy, and so I had got the nickname Bear. Okay, so I don't get hit on by women, but I do get hit on by men a lot. And I've taken this. I've taken this thing as where I just appreciate it. Like, I'm not homosexual, but I'm not offended by it. In fact, it makes me feel really good. I'm like, well, if I can catch your attention, at least I'm catching attention. Like, makes me feel like an attractive human. Like, I may not be into what you're into, but at least you're recognizing like I'm putting in some work.
Oh
And so,
man.
yeah. So anyway, so I affectionately get the name Bear, and then comes the strawberry moon of 2025, and I am on a mountainside in Colorado, and we decide that we're going to do a giant psilocybin ceremony. I usually do 4 major ceremonies a year, out of practice, which is
Mhm.
we do solstices and we do equinoxes, and so we observe those as our holidays. And
Mhm.
so we went out there on the strawberry moon, which happened to be, I think it was an equinox. I may be wrong on that, but we go out there. I do some shrooms, and the whole point of this ceremony is not to do work. We are out here to have a good time. And so I'm like, you know what? We're going to go out there. We're going to take a little bit of shrooms. I didn't even think I took that much. I think I took like a gram and a half, 2 grams, something like that. My intent was to like enjoy the strawberry moon in nature, in the mountains, and that's where I'm at. 10 minutes later, the shrooms are like, you know what you're doing tonight? You're working, brother. And I was like, shit, I don't want to work. And so I tried to fight it, and then it was like, no. And then finally, my wife was like, just do the work. And so I lay down on the ground, and I'm in the dirt next to this fire. And I am laying so close to the fire that the embers of the fire are literally coming out of the fire, and they're burning holes in my clothes. Like it's burning through my sweatshirt, it's burning through my blankets. Like I'm 100% on fire. And I get this. I get this idea, because I believe in this conscious hallucination that we're in, and I also believe that there is no spoon. And so, in this altered state that I was in, it's like, put your hand in the fire. You won't burn. It won't burn if you don't believe it can burn you. And then this is where the warning comes from, because this is where I think having a practical, rational brain and a scientific approach is I went, stop. Hey, guy, you're on a powerful drug. It is a psychedelic. You are hallucinating right now. And this is the stupid stories you hear about people doing dumb shit when they're on drugs. Do you want to be one of those people that do dumb shit on drugs? And I was like, no, not really. So don't stick your fucking hand in the fire. And so I didn't do it. Obviously, it was like an awareness, like, oh yeah, I need to have some responsibility in this moment. Like realize that I'm still doing a psychedelic. I'm not Thor out here able to like fire bear. And so the combination of those two things has led to the nickname Burning Bear.
Hmm.
And so this is where it all comes from. Everybody thinks it's like some type of cultural appropriation with the Native American. It had nothing to do with that. It really has to do with most people think I'm gay and I fit the definition of a bear really well. And then I almost lit myself on fire in the middle of a psilocybin ceremony. So there is ipso facto Burning Bear. Well earned nickname.
Oh, this is so good. Oh, I can't
You
even.
haven't heard that one on the podcast before, I'm sure.
No, as you're describing this, I'm thinking of all my names,
Yeah.
and this is such a loop. But because right now, Phoenix, this is the one that's used the most lately. But you said about Jill Bolte Taylor, and I've got my four throughout my life without even realizing. All my names and nicknames that I've carried throughout my life occupy a different quadrant in my head, which is the
Oh.
weirdest and the craziest. Because Phoenix is my quadrant four, which
Mm.
is the high spiritual, that part.
Mm-hmm.
Gigs is my nickname that only, it's so funny, only a group of people at this moment call me Gigs. That's short for giggles. That's my number three, my excited little kid, and I fit that so well when I get in all my giggly moods and whatnot. Then I have Jojo, which Jojo has been, now it's my number one, my quadrant one, which is the doer, the personality. I used to be called Jojo when I first moved into the UK. Nobody could say my name, which is Iwana, which is my number two, which is my given name. It's so great, like all of them in there. And I so understand this, like having different names throughout your life. I believe that I am not my name also.
Yes.
As much as I have this label that it's attached to me so people can know, pointing to that person, that's who that is. So just so you know,
Mm-hmm.
I never feel like I have resonated deeply with any of my names as
Yeah.
much as I've carried them throughout my life. It's such a weird thing. I am gonna take this because you mentioned your trip journey. I don't know what you call them, trip or journeys or for pleasure, whatever. I have a little thing with, maybe it's a bit of a bigger one, of a trigger with people using weed as a recreational tool. Like that to me, that really bugs the fuck out of me, to be honest. Because
Ooh.
of that, because of what you said earlier in our conversation, somewhere down there. And I wanted to come back to this when you were talking about it, but then we just went some other direction. So now I remembered it again. Because in my head, all of these medicines are medicines and they're to be treated in a certain kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
So in my head, when I hear people that are just using them recreationally with no reverence, basically, towards what it is, I have this little bit of a trigger there.
Yeah.
So how do you treat this? What's your relationship with weed? Because I know you mentioned it as a plant medicine, but is it
Oh,
still
look, I didn't start a podcast called the Stone Apes Podcast because I don't get high. Um,
of course.
let's be honest with, yeah, you're definitely talking to somebody that I think most people would describe as a stoner or a hippie.
Mhm.
Even
Mhm.
though I don't look the part, nobody's going to look at me and think I'm a hippie. But I enjoy weed thoroughly, and I do
Mhm.
use weed primarily recreationally. Now,
Mhm.
with that said, there are some important things that come with that. One, I have used weed in many different modalities. When I first started using weed, I was using edibles and I was using indica, and I was specifically trying to fix this physiological issue that I had with an enlarged prostate and potentially prostate cancer. I learned how to work with the medicine from that. The side effect of the medicine is you get very high, right? And at the beginning of this, I did not enjoy it at all.
Mm.
As I got down the road from that and learning more about how the blood brain barrier works, how smoking is different, how smoking enacts more psychoactive properties, and how the indica and the edibles are great, and even a sativa, but not so much the sativa. It's different strains, different terpenes matter. There are certain strains that are very good at working at the body. So, like anymore, I'm also very into fitness. I'm a rock climber. I do jujitsu and I teach Muay Thai. And so I have a lot of fitness at 45 that I'm doing things that most 20-year-old men do. And so I do get sore and I do get, like, the physical ailments that come with that. I use weed, especially indica, especially edibles, different terpenes, to heal my body physically. So, there will
Mhm.
be nights like if I'm super sore, I'll take something like that before I go to bed as a way to heal the body. I wake up in the morning and the next thing you know, I'm not sore. It's like it's unbelievable how miraculously this works. And I also believe that there's a part of that that comes into our quantum consciousness. I believe it, right? So we have the placebo effect and things like that that play in. Then I got into day smoking, and I actually spent a period of my life for about 1 year where I was high from the time I woke up in the morning until the time I went to bed at night, but very purposefully. I was doing that before the psychoactive properties. I had actually switched to smoking weed, not doing the edibles, and I switched to a sativa, and I was looking for specific terpenes like limonene and things like that because I was looking for certain psychokinetic effects to the weed. And I was dealing with anxiety and other emotional issues at that time that I was trying. I had really bad anxiety. I discovered later was caused because it's a side effect of ADHD and underdevelopment. And because I subscribed to the male patriarchy, my brain was underdeveloped, which means I have adult ADHD and, the whole thing. So I used the weed in that space to come out of that. Then I stopped because I realized, even though this was helping me so much with healing through these mental issues, it really wasn't a good thing for me to be walking around in life high from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. And so then I flipped the script and I moved it to an evening only, like a nightcap. And at that point, I would say that most of my weed use is quote unquote recreational, where I come home in the evenings once my responsibilities are done for the day, once I don't have anything else going on. Yes, I will be high almost every evening, but I'm aware of the physical benefits that I'm getting from that. I
Mm.
know that I'm getting physical benefits. I choose what modality I want to use. Like last night, for example, I did stretching with cannabis because I really wanted to get into a deeper stretch. I was looking for things like emotional releases that could potentially be present. I was really wanting to be able to focus that. I will use different types of weed for things like meditation and other modalities. There are learning aspects where I will use cannabis, even though understanding the limitations. Anything that you learn while on cannabis is those pathways are only programmed and set while under the influence of the medicine. So there are other modalities that come into that. But I think for me, it is learning the balance. That's what everything is about. It's about balance. And one of the beautiful things that we have with this medicine is it is fun, it is enjoyable. I like to be high. I also understand the need to do work. But if this medicine that I am doing allows me to just enjoy it and it's still working as medicine, then I don't see a fault in that. And I don't discourage others from doing that. I do think there's a certain level of responsibility. There's time, place, setting. There's certain responsibilities socially that come with that. I don't want you to smoke weed and go drive your car. I don't want you to go out there and show up at your kid's school super stoned. I think that those are probably, no different than I'd want to see somebody walking around at the zoo with a beer in their hand. Like there is a time and place for a beer, and it's not with your kids at the zoo. Like put your addiction down and like be present. So I do have these spaces, but at the same time, man, if you just want to get high and enjoy getting high, but you're working with the medicine in other ways, then that's great. Where I think the danger comes in, you have to understand what the power of these medicines are. And that is the neuroplasticity. That's understanding the neuroplasticity windows. That's also realizing that just as much as I could sit here and tell you how great I think psilocybin is, I really have to preface that with when used appropriately. I also think every psychedelic is equally as dangerous and destructive as it is beneficial. Because if you are on something that is capable of producing neuroplasticity, able to generate neurotrophy, now you have to realize that only is good if we are behaving and thinking and working in a way that we are reinforcing the type of neural pathways that we're wanting. If I'm doing something bad, if I'm engaging in negative behavior, if I'm supercycling in depression, if I'm going through some of these other traumas, well, guess what that psychedelic is going to do? All of those things that make it
Amazing.
a very potent, powerful healer are now going to destroy you. You were going to you thought you had a highway before, now you just put in a super highway and you were really dangerous, dangerous territory. So, responsible use first, always. Education and understanding what responsible use entails. Okay. So yes, when I sit down and I say, okay, well, I'm going to do 2 or 3 grams tonight because really all I'm looking for the medicine is I'm looking for the brain healing, like I had with the concussion. I had a
Hmm.
major concussion, head injury. I knew it was bad, and I don't want the TBI because I've spent 6 years working through that, but not necessarily in a place where I want to lay down and do a bunch of work right now. Okay. Because I'm doing work all the time, whether it be daily journaling, whether it be, different meditations or thinking through things or whatever the concept may be. There's always work happening. I'm always reflecting, analyzing, correcting. Like that's part of my process. So if I want to sit around a campfire and I just want to enjoy my evening and and do that on a few shrooms while I let my brain heal, great. Now I also understand what I'm doing. I understand what that medicine's doing. I am not going to allow myself to engage in negative behaviors or activities associated with that. I'm going to control my mental space in that space. I'm going to be present and aware. And most importantly, I know that I just opened up a neuroplasticity window for a while, whether it be 7 days to 2 weeks, depending on how much I've done. So not only do I have to be cognitive and present in that, but I need to be aware of that in the days following that recreational activity. Can't wake up the
Hmm.
next day and go to fuckery because I will reinforce fuckery.
I
Okay.
love that word.
So yeah. So like, I mean, that's the results. So I think it just comes down to education, individual responsibility, and relationship with the medicine. Because that is the one benefit that we have with this medicine is the fact that it is enjoyable. It is fun. Weed is enjoyable. I love to be high. There are some things I do way better high. I love doing jujitsu and different activities while stoned because it I actually do better and it helps me learn more. And I do engage in these practices in a recreational way with the relationship that I've built with the medicine. But there's always, and there first and foremost is always the responsibility and the education and the underlying acceptance that this is a medicine. And then I get educated and I choose how I want to work with it. With all that said, like you, I do cringe at recreational use of most substances, especially when I see them being done in a way that is being reinforced through addiction, through trauma spaces. Look, all these people out there that are getting on weed, that are living in these spaces, and they're in bad places in life, they're in bad places mentally, they have trauma, they have all this stuff going on. I am not going to sell you that weed is going to heal them. In fact, what it's doing, it's catastrophically reinforcing the shit show that is them in their life. And it's
Hmm.
now creating something that is a real problem that you're going to have to figure out some serious options to fix because this is real. And I don't think that people talk about the dangers of the medicine enough. And everything good can be bad, and sometimes the more good something can be, also the more bad it can be. And but we don't live in a society that likes to have the responsibility conversation. We like to blame the thing, right? That's the victim society we live in. Oh, the weed
Mm-hmm.
is bad. The weed is bad. It does this. Well, no, 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 no. The weed can be bad. So can a gun be bad? Like a loaded gun isn't going to pick itself up at the table and shoot you,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
some asshole behind the trigger might. Okay. So responsible use here. I might do that if I don't know how I'm interacting with that weapon and I accidentally shoot myself or accidentally shoot someone else. It can be dangerous. And inherently on its own, it's just a tool. And that's how I kind of view the medicine. It's just a tool, but it can be very dangerous. It can be just as dangerous, if not more so, than a loaded gun. And it is being irresponsibly used within the spiritual plant medicine space and in the recreational drug space. And again, this is where I come back to the center. Like there's a balance. There doesn't always have to be these polarizing opposite ends. There's a holistic unity that occurs in the center, but we for whatever reason we don't like to find our way there. And so to me it's all about balance.
100%. Because it could be weed, or it could be alcohol, or it could be food, it could be shopping, it could be anything. It could, because
Absolutely.
we all have our own little, or it could be a feeling, because we're all addicted to our own feelings as well, whether they're
Mhm.
good or bad.
Yeah.
I
I've dealt
appreciate
with
that.
all three. I've dealt with all three of those addictions. I've suffered from shopping addiction. I was consumerism. I was 100% addicted to shopping. Oh, by the way, the ADHD really like worked
Has a
against me.
thing with it.
The dopamine mining, right? I'm looking for dopamine responses, and so I developed this terrible shopping addiction, right? Probably another thing that gets me called bear, right? Because I'm a man that likes to shop. So like I have consumerism issues, and I had to work through those, and so I really relate to a lot of that. It's like these there are other spaces. I was addicted to being depressed. I was
Hmm.
addicted to being sad. Um, and I didn't realize how much I was addicted to that. I thought I was suffering from like manic depression. Reality, I was suffering from the addiction to the feeling of depression.
Hmm.
And oh, wow. You mentioned with the alcohol thing as well. It's the one argument that I can make for cannabis over alcohol. Cannabis is at least doing good and amazing things for your body. Alcohol is not. It is doing the complete opposite. There is no conversation that we can have where alcohol is beneficial to the human body. It is other than clean drinking water and maybe if you limited it to one glass per night and we can have some conversations about some centenarians. But other than that, there is no usable benefit. And cannabis is not that way. So if you're going to use something recreationally, and if you're using alcohol regularly and the impacts and the detriments to that physically, emotionally, mentally, versus cannabis regularly and the impacts of that physically, mentally, and emotionally, I would say that I would much prefer cannabis. With that said, I think there still is the real danger. The real danger with alcoholism is liver disease and shortened lifespan and all of the stuff that comes. What is it called, neurosis, where you get
Hmm.
the brain starts to die and eat away. Right? The same danger is there in cannabis on the other side. Is now you have heightened neuroplasticity, and what are you reinforcing in your behavior, and that could be dangerous as well.
Hmm.
So none of these things should be used as supplements or substitutes or one size fits all pills. In fact, more than anything, I would encourage people that everything that we do can be done with or without plant medicine. Plant medicine is a tool. It's a modality. If you don't feel comfortable with it, don't do it. Can you achieve all of this? Can you wake up from the matrix? Can you find your healing? Can you develop your good cognitive, tools and all of these spaces without the medicine? 1000%. You don't need to do ayahuasca, psilocybin, or cannabis to find yourself. You're already here.
Can
Like,
I
but
just can I just throw this in here, because we've spoken about all these substances and everything, and journeys and paths that people walk on, and so far to a certain point in my life, I believed of what's the point of anything external of you when you can achieve all those states without. That was honestly my stick that I would walk around with. This is my stick and this is what I believe in. You can achieve all of those states through meditation, through breath work, through other kind of modalities that do not include an external substance, up until a point where this is gonna be so funny. In my head, it's very funny. First time I had a an edible was, hold on, what year are we now? 2023. And it was a complete journey. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just a little bit happy. Honest to God, like to the point of I knew I was in this room and I knew the door was closed, that behind that wall and behind that door there's only universe and stars. Like I knew there nothing else exists beyond
Mm,
what I see with my eyes. Same evening, went for a walk, went outside. It was dark, but there were little lights here and there, and I could see as far as the lights were. And I was like, oh my God, reality really exists up until where the light is. Like, it was such a fucking journey for me. It was
mm,
not anything. I smoked weed once, like, and I said, never again in my life. How the fuck do people like this thing? It was awful in my head. And I've done ketamine, but ketamine
mm.
as a same kind of thing, like a treatment journey tool, not as recreational. And
Yeah.
even with that, it was like I can see the difference in my experience and how my reality feels different. Yet it didn't do anything for me that I thought, oh my God, this has changed my life so much, and I'm just gonna be a completely different person now. Now,
Yeah.
that's not to say mushrooms.
Yeah, that one.
They've been
Shrooms.
popping up. They've been popping up in my existence quite a lot lately.
Hmm.
And I know there's a call there for me. Also, ayahuasca. I would love to experience ayahuasca. And I also am not searching for it. If it shows up in my life, cool. If not, not. It's like everything else. And then finding the balance with all of this. And then the why behind all of this. So what you described there with your use of cannabis, let's say, I really appreciate what you said there. The reasoning behind it, and the understanding of it. And even if it's just recreational, there's still another kind of foundation to what you're doing and
Hmm.
the place that you're doing it from. Because, like you said, if you're in a very depressed state and if you're suicidal and whatever, and then you smoke a little bit of weed, you're just gonna accentuate all of that. So I really appreciate the explanation, in-depth explanation that you gave there
Oh,
about
you're
that part.
well. Pro tip: the best thing that cannabis is used for, in my opinion, and I forget this from time to time, but every time I'm reminded, like, oh my goodness, is this the world's greatest use of cannabis? Cold medicine. The next time you have a cold, the flu, I want you to get high. You will be blown away by how much better you feel almost instantaneously. It works better than any NyQuil, any over the counter medicine you will ever take. And it took me a few times to remember that, because you're not thinking about that like when you're dying of the flu. You're sick and you're in bed, you're like, oh, I can't move. Oh. Get high.
That's man flu you're
Instant,
describing there.
instant relief. Instant relief. That is man flu. Yeah, I know. I know. Women don't experience flu in the same way, and this is true because they have to be adults. But you know, maybe I still get to share a little bit of like man flu in my life. Huh? I will have to think about that one. Yeah. Okay. Challenge. Like I said earlier, I'm not through all of the layers yet, so maybe this is one I'm still
Which is
holding on to.
great. That's
Um,
great.
but yeah, that's actually a really good thought. I'm gonna have to explore that. I'll do that after the podcast. I'll tell my wife, I'm like, do I still do man flu? And she's probably gonna be like, yes. I'm like,
Yes.
shit.
And you're saying throw a little bit of weed at it. I last time I had, like, I was beginning of a cold. I think it felt like a bad cold that was coming on, and I thought I'm gonna throw a fast at it. And I did a 3-day water
Mhm.
fast, and it went away.
Hard.
And of course, it's 3 days. It's not like you smoke once and you're feeling already better.
Yeah.
But of course, there's many other things in that, because the water fast generally shows me a lot of other things about myself,
Yep.
and about my habits and about my behaviors and about whatever else comes up to the surface. So, but
Hmm.
I do appreciate that too.
Fasting is a staple of my fitness regimen. So,
Mm.
and I promote fasting as, and I'm actually surprised you do that as well. Well, I guess not surprised really, but uh, I fasting is like that. That is my foundational pillar of my health. It all
Mm.
starts with fasting, and everything else is in addition to fasting. And I love that you just said that, because yes, I do a minimum of a 24 to a 72 hour fast per week, and then I do a 7 day fast once a quarter as just like
Oh
maintenance.
wow.
And then
Okay, you're
anything,
extra.
yeah, and then and then my longest fast, like I said, I was very overweight. My longest fast was a little over 40 days, and I
Wow.
lost a significant amount of weight doing that. But man alive, I cannot speak highly enough for the benefits of fasting. And that comes back to like what we were talking about earlier. You can play this mental game until you're blue in the face with metacognition, with psychology, with all this stuff. If you're not a healthy human being, and we talk about that with the medicine, like your brain. If I showed up here with a broken arm and you were like, "Hey, let's go play basketball," you would understand right away that I'm not in a space to go play basketball. Like you'd just be like, "Yeah, probably not going to happen," right? But that's what everybody is doing with their brain. They have all this TBI and all this brain injury, and their brain is actually injured, and then they're trying to heal. Well, you don't have a functioning body part, and your whole body is that way. Like if your hormones aren't regulated properly, and you're dealing with hormone dysregulation, and your cells aren't optimizing, and your cellular expression isn't on point, like you're not a healthy body, you're not a healthy human being. How do you expect everything up here to work right? Like,
Hmm.
so I love that you're also on the lane of fasting and health, because without a healthy body, priority first, you're not doing this right. And that's been my dig on pastors. I used to have all these pastors that get up there, because I've been a smoker most of my life. I enjoy cigarettes, and I've always get those pastors to be up there preaching against smoking, but they're 120 pounds overweight. And it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
doesn't the Bible say something about gluttony? Just checking, asking for a friend. No, that conversation doesn't happen.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Because obviously everybody eats. Everybody eats. You kind of have to eat to survive, right? Or whatever the way the saying goes. But
Well,
but,
that may
but
be
do
the most
you?
beneficial thing of fasting is mental discipline and strength.
Yeah,
Because
that's
what you
what it's
just
been like for me. Honestly, I haven't
everybody
done.
eats. When you can control through discipline the biological function of needing and wanting food. Whoa. Once you get that down pat, you could do all the other shit pretty easy. Like that became the foundation for like my mental fortitude. It's like, oh
Hmm.
man, because you can't escape that. Like I can avoid alcohol, I can avoid
Hmm.
cigarettes,
Hmm.
I can avoid weed. Okay, I can avoid these things. You cannot, under any circumstance, ever avoid food. You just can't. It's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
literally everywhere all the time. And it takes such a level of like internal fortitude and determination and discipline to be able to move through that. But once you do that, man, the gift that gives you with the rest of your life, it's like then when somebody is like, "Oh, I want you to quit smoking." Okay, well, yeah, I can do that.
Hmm.
Or if
Hmm.
anything, even if you don't do that, like sometimes I waver with that on and off. I kind of float back in spaces because I'm still me and I'm still having an experience, so I'm not going to pretend like I'm perfect, right? I,
Of
I I
course.
will I will have cigarettes every now and then and stuff like that, and but what it really comes down to is like I've given myself grace in those spaces, and I also know at the end of the day, this down to personal responsibility. When I struggle with quitting smoking, I know I'm struggling because I really don't want to. Because if I really want to, I have the mental fortitude to do it.
Hmm.
Which
Hmm.
means if I'm not doing something, it's because I truthfully don't want to. And I'm
Hmm.
I'm I'm either being lazy or I'm throwing a temper tantrum or I just simply don't want to. But I can't
Hmm.
escape that fact because I'm in charge of that. So like you don't have anything to blame. It's not the cigarettes, it's not this, it's not that. It's like, no, I'm fully in control of my ability to stop this at any moment that I choose. Now, if I'm not making that choice, then I have to wrestle with the bigger why. Why are you not
Yeah,
making
yeah,
that choice?
yeah. Oh God, I so see that. I mean, I haven't done yet. My longest fast was 3 days, and I've done that 3 times in the past couple of years, not even months or whatever. So what you're doing is extreme. I would say
Oh,
once
fair.
once a week, 3 days. Yeah, I get it. But everybody's different. So for me, I've noticed same thing. If I want to do a fast and I am not ready for it, it won't happen. But I don't know how to explain the readiness because it's a mental readiness of sorts, because I can go without food. I have noticed this about myself, and I think going to a vipassana retreat has also helped with the discipline part, with
Mhm.
the because I thought that was going to be such a hard thing to do, to go somewhere and meditate for 10 days 10 hours a day, not interact with anybody, not see anybody in any external world. I thought it was going to be so hard, I was prepared for something very hard. But once I was there, it came to a point where we would have breaks in the day, and I'd be like, "Oh, can we go back to meditation now?" Because I couldn't stand walking around and wasting time. That's what it seemed like. I'm just fucking wasting time walking around. Can we go back to meditation now? But even that has given me more proof of the strength that's inside of me. Because many times I don't believe that I have that strength. So that fasting, alcohol and other substances, it's not a problem for me because it's never been, all throughout my life, that's never been a thing in my life. Like, not even like alcohol, for example, I haven't drank in 3 years, and
Yeah.
even that was very sporadic before. And it's not because I didn't want to, it just so happened I've never been drawn to it, and then I
Yeah.
never go and buy it. So so I'm good with that.
I'm so health conscious. The
Mm,
alcohol is not even something I even remotely struggle with, and
mm-hmm,
I think that that is another part of addiction that I'm always picking on all these things that are popular, like AA, right? This whole
mm-hmm.
idea that like once you're an addict, you're always an addict. I think that's a disservice. I think that's bullshit and that's a lie. I think that is one of those victimhood stances where you are pretending that you are now subject to the authority of something else, and in this case, it's alcohol. It's it's a choice, and I don't go back to alcohol because I'm a health nut. Like that's really what it is, right? I'm so addicted to my health that it's like
I was just thinking that.
even in the moments that I want a beer, you say that it's about self-love. I love myself. I
Mm-hmm.
one of the most one of the biggest turning points of my life. I did this exercise. Mel Robbins was doing this high five thing, and I followed her with her 3-2-1 philosophy, which actually really worked for me because I'm terrible about getting started on things. So it's like every now and then I still use that. It's like 3-2-1. All right, get your ass up, dude. Come on, let's go. And so I'll get up and I get off the couch or whatever I'm doing, and I use that. And so when she came out with this high five technique, I thought, oh, I really like Mel Robbins. She's authentic. She gets high like I do and has bad days, and like she doesn't seem like she's selling bullshit. So I tried her high five method. It wasn't working for me at all. I don't give people high fives. It's not really part of my thing. I've tried to like the fist bump thing, but I'm going up to the mirror, and I'm like, good job, and I'm high fiving myself, and nothing's happening.
See, I don't know what the high five method is, so
It's
I
it's her
think I'm getting it.
it was her second book after her 3-2-1 method, and I definitely think that for some people out there I could definitely see how this is something that would work, but for me it just didn't. And then one day I walked into the bathroom, and I go through the motions. I fist bump myself, I give myself the high five, I'm talking to myself, I'm doing my affirmations for the day. I've tried all kinds of crazy stuff over the years.
Of course.
Yeah, you're a scientist, right? You're going to experiment, and you try some things, you like them, you let them go, you keep them, whatever. And this was one of those that wasn't really working for me. And so I look at myself in the mirror, and I'm really struggling with this concept of self-love. And then I look at myself and I make really good eye contact, and I take some moment to really kind of let that sink in, and I kind of get in there and I'm really in the zone. And then I was like, I love you. Again, I meant that. And man, that hit. That was like that moment where you're like, I actually love myself. Like for real. Like not in a fake way, not in like
Hmm.
I'm supposed to way. Like I actually love me. Well, and it's like, holy shit. Once you get to that space, and then it's like, well, the decision I'm making directly impacts me. And that's how I feel in the fitness and the nutrition space. I love me. I'm not going to slather my body with chemicals. I'm not going to wear chemicals and plastics in my clothes. I'm not going to consume chemicals and plastics and toxins and all of this other bullshit, which, if you live in the United States of America, is almost fucking impossible, by the way. I'm so jealous of my European friends. Like, food in Europe, like, holy shit. Like, they are literally trying to poison and kill everyone here. Like, it sounds crazy. I imagine that sounds like an extreme statement, but you would not believe the time, effort, and energy it takes to eat and live clean. My poor wife, it's like a full-time job. She will buy a product, it's a clean product, that product gets bought out by some corporation, and the next thing you know, it's got all these fillers and chemicals and preservatives and bullshit in it, and she's on to another product. It's in our food, it's in our products. You can't buy anything here without someone trying to poison and kill you. And then it seems like, well, the people here that, I've ate this way my whole life, I've done this, I've done that, why do you care? Well, fucker, I care because I love me. I, I love myself. I'm doing all this work to be better. I'm not trying to kill myself, bro. Like, all I'm asking for, like, low hanging fruit. I would like food that isn't poisoned. Can we just do that? Like, is that like really, am I being that crazy? How about you sell me a t shirt that doesn't have microplastics in it? Like, that would be great. Can we just go back to fucking cotton? Like, I'm not
Yeah.
asking for a lot, but these are all parts of that like self love conversation and the motivation and the discipline it takes to like move through life. Why do you live this way? Well, because I love myself. Why do you do these
Hmm.
things? Because I love myself. Like that's where it all comes down. And then my love for myself then goes into everything else that I have. Because if I love people, it's because I'm choosing to love them. And then if I choosing to love them, obviously it means something to me. And if it means something to me, then I'm going to enact on that. And then I'm responsible for how I make them feel. I'm responsible for how I show up for them. I'm responsible for how I show up for myself. And the buck stops here every time.
The funny part of what you said about the food and clothes and all of that jazz. In here in Europe, a lot of the foods that you guys have got over there are banned. They're like
Should be.
honestly poisoned 100%. And I lived in Florida for about 8 months. So, and then the other two, I traveled through the States.
Mm-hmm.
And in the time when I lived in Florida, I had a roommate and she had a bread in a bread bin on the side on the counter. And I think that bread must have been in there for about a month. And I remember getting it out one day and looking at it. It looked as fresh as it would have been bought yesterday. And in my head, it's like, how does this make sense? And mind you, I am originally from Romania. And I grew up in the time where, like, me in particular, my grandparents lived on a hill. They had their own farm, grew their own animal, done hay and worked the land and done whatever. And I grew up in that and I freaking loved it. So I used to eat everything that was straight from the animal, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
or from the ground. Or I remember when I was little, my mom used to, in her garden patch, she would put carrots, let's say, and they were only little carrots in spring still growing. And I would just get them out of the earth, go to the tap in the garden, rinse them off a bit, and just eat them off there, you know? And I grew up like that. And then or buying bread, let's say, bread would be bad in 2 days, you
Mm-hmm.
know, and then to go and see that, it was like, what the hell? What does that tell you? What the heck is in that bread? You know?
This is one of those things where I actually have no answers for this. Like,
Of course.
everything that I can conceptualize an answer just sounds like conspiracy shit. And
Yeah.
it seems so deliberate. I have thought about it from the business. I have a damn near, I'm all but dissertation and a doctorate in business. So I understand business very well. I've been an entrepreneur, a successful entrepreneur for, 20 some odd years of my life. And I can't understand it or make sense of it from a business standpoint, right?
Hmm.
And so when you get outside of that space, it's like, okay, we can talk about cost, we can talk about all this stuff. At the end of the day, like, there seems to be some type of, even when you have these all natural brands and they make a name for themselves by being all natural, and then they get bought out by a corporation, and then almost immediately the fillers start coming in, the dyes start coming in, the preservatives start coming in, and it's like, but that isn't what made you bought this brand, because they were doing something different. Why
Mm-hmm.
do you feel the need to keep, obviously we have oligarchy issues. Oh, man, we have so many issues in the United States right now. Holy shit. Anyway,
Let's not go down that
I'm
path.
not gonna go down that road.
Let's
um,
not go there.
yeah, it is a challenging time to be an American. But in this space, there is there is a lot of frustrations, because it just doesn't really make sense how much poison, how much bad things exist in everything, whether it be your skincare products, the things you put on your body, like getting things like soap and getting things like shampoo and conditioner. And then these things are also priced at such a premium. You can go to your local store and you can buy a bottle of chemical laden shampoo for $3 to $4. That bottle of non-chemical laden shampoo is going to be 12 or 14 for the
Mm.
exact same bottle, and a lot of times
Mm-hmm.
often smaller. They have really made healthy living a class issue in the United States. You have to be of a certain income, and I'm grateful that I am. I am wealthy enough in the United States of America to be able to live above that threshold. But most people in the United States are not. There's no way they could live with the cost of clean goods. And then you also have the deception, like here when it comes to things like grass-fed meats. They actually have a thing, like when you read through the rules and you go through how they passed it, you could have a cow that's lived its entire life in a pen eating grains its whole life, and if that farmer walks up and takes a handful of grass and gives it to that cow right before it dies, they can label that product as grass fed.
Mm-hmm.
That is not
Mm-hmm.
the same thing. That is not the same thing as pasture raised. That these are complete. So not only do you have to navigate all the bullshit, but then you also can't even trust when a company says it's grass fed, hormone free. You have to research the company. You got to find out what their
Terminology.
actual practices are, how they're treating the animals. Is it really pasture raised? Because they can lie on all of this stuff. And it has created such a challenging space for Americans that want to live healthy. And much of my desire to leave the United States is just because I would like to get somewhere where I feel like everyone isn't trying to kill me all the time. It is such a stressful environment to live in when everything around you is an assault on your being. And that makes this space so difficult. But I on that same note, I could say this in a statement of and I would go big numbers here, 1,000 people. Let's say you put me in a room with 1,000 people. Maybe you're going to get five or six that are going to agree with what I said. The rest of them are just going to laugh at me, make fun of me, and think I'm being absolutely ridiculous and tell me how stupid it is that I'm one of those crunchy, crazy, weird people for wanting to take care of myself. And
Mm-hmm.
that I think is like, conceptually, it's been so hard for me to understand. Like, there are some problems in this world that I really have a hard time conceptualizing, and this is one of those. Like, I don't understand why access to clean, healthy living is so hard. It shouldn't be this hard. We have all this technology, all this advancements, all these things to be living so much better, and yet we're living so much worse. Maybe we have more comfort, but man, the quality of living has went down significantly. And they were living better in the tribal days when they were living in teepees. Yeah, we have all this technology and all this comfort, but they were healthier. They were mentally healthier. They were socially healthier. They were doing everything better. And now we've gotten far enough down this with corporations and oligarchies and all of the stuff that exists within that space, and the poison, and all the way down to the air and the water and the drinking foods. Like, it's just unbelievable. It's like, why can't we just stop? Why can't we start taking care of ourselves? Like, why can't we just take care of the planet? Like, everybody wants to go on and on about God. If there is anything that's God, it's the fucking planet that we live on, man. This earth, this little floating ball of dust happens to be the giver of all life. And last time I checked, we're like from it. And then the only thing that we want to do is destroy it. I don't understand this. Like conceptually, that seems like insanity to me. And the fact that that statement is makes people call me the crazy one because it is so socially acceptable to be on the crazy train of, fuck it, the planet will take care of itself. Like, dude, like how could there be anything more important? Like
But then
serious.
see, this is where the cult word comes out. Because you
Yeah.
could be part of a cult, by wanting to do that, by wanting to live freely. And this is where people start buying land and growing their own animals and making their own food and everything. So there's
Hmm.
that part. So then to change the whole, because it feels like near enough the lens of the victim is being put on all of this, because
Hmm.
there's also the part of me that has this Abraham Hicks little clip in my head. And mind you, prefacing Abraham Hicks with the idea that many times people spiritually bypass a lot of themselves by following Abraham Hicks, but there's also a lot of goodness in what they share. And one
Hmm.
of the things that they were sharing once was Esther was at a party with some friends and they were getting this food out. And one of the friends was saying, "Oh, that's bad for you because of this." And then, "Oh, that's bad for you because of that." And that's bad for you because of that. And then Esther was like, "But I'm going to eat this. So I'm not going to keep saying that everything that I put into my body is bad." You know, there might be all of that. And there's also the part of maybe my belief is not as strong yet as to affect fully the things that go in my body, on my body, but my belief might be on the high of I believe that I can influence by the gratitude that I have towards the things that I use, or just thinking that they're going to be good for me instead of thinking that they're going to be bad for me. Because otherwise, I'm going to go down this path of that's not good, that's not good, that's not good. And I've noticed I went down that as well. And especially lately, it's been showing up with human human garage, you guys call it. And they do all this fascia maneuvers, and this guy talks so much about that red light and Wi-Fi's and Bluetooth, and that's bad. And I'm like, oh my God, I could do that. And then he's biohacking everything. And I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I could do that. I could follow that. But that also feels to my body like a lot of stress. It feels like I have to be careful with this, I have to be careful with that, I can't have this, I can't. So there's a lot of fear around all of it. And then I'm like, do I want to live in fear or do I want to live in love? So there's even that has a balance for me, because yes, I can see all the things that are not so natural and not so healthy, let's say, and also I can be like, okay, but sometimes I can just forget about it all.
Yeah. You said something that's really important that I agree with and that I would like to promote. I think you're right. It is about a healthy balance. You even though I get angry about these things, obviously I feel
Hmm.
strongly about
Hmm.
them. There is this reality in where you just do your best. Do I
Hmm.
stress about those things? No, because I do take the time to do my best in
Hmm.
ensuring, we do things like Yucca app. I scan my products, like especially things that I'm putting on my body. The skin is the largest organ in the body. I
Yeah.
do scan things to make sure that I'm being as healthy as I can be. But with that same alternative, you're right. There is a certain level of conscious expression that I think comes into play here because placebo effects and things like that are real. But just like with the limitations we gave earlier with quantum entanglement, there is there is a certain amount of like I think that you can quantum express into your blue in the face, and maybe there's some amazing people out there that can prove me wrong. But if you're eating bars of uranium every day, you're probably going to die of cancer and radiation poisoning. And that just so I think that's where the balance comes in. Like you
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
learn and
Yeah.
educate yourself and recognize, and you should be angry at the corporations and the people that are trying to do this to you. But at the same time, I also agree, like you just have to live life the very best that you can, and not to take these things to extreme levels. These things that I have mentioned are not impacting my life in a negative way, meaning that this isn't adding stress or anything in my life
Mm.
other than the frustrations that occur. If I'm drinking a product like I used to drink this one caffeinated product by a company in Colorado called Bang. It was a caffeinated product with natural sugar, so it had 9 grams of sugar in it. Well, yeah, I'm going to take that all day over something that has sucralose in it or something like that. Like, I don't want that. Well, then they changed the formula. It got bought out, and they changed the formula, and now it has sucralose in it. I don't drink it anymore. I'd rather have the real sugar. And so those things like that, yeah, that creates frustration moments. It's like, there was a product I really enjoyed. Now I have to find an alternative. And
Mhm.
now I need to find an alternative that doesn't have an artificial sweetener, whether it be sucralose or aspartame. I'm a little more fluid with things like stevia. I don't mind stevia, and I use like monk fruit and xanthan gum and every now and then. But I just think that it just comes to these balance points. So I agree with everything that you said there. I just wanted to make that clarification so that the audience understood that is definitely part of it. But you're
Oh
also
my
right
god.
on the cult side of it too.
You said the audience, and I'm like, I wonder how many people are gonna watch this to the end.
I have no idea. I don't even know how many subscribe. I could be talking to 3 people, or I could be talking to 300,000 people. I have no way of knowing. So,
Yeah, and we're still
you know,
having fun. So, in
absolutely,
that, honestly, on that note, we're gonna have to wrap this up because it's 9:30 my end, and I
it's
wanna
so long.
go to
It's
bed soon. I am that person. I'd rather go to bed early.
this
I
is the
am the opposite.
this is the longest podcast I've ever shot or been a part of. So,
Wow.
and
Same.
I will tell you one thing to you, just honest, like, peer review. Wow, you're a great interviewer. You did a fantastic job today, and I was, as somebody who does this as a professional themselves, it is nice to do these shows with other people who are professionals, because sometimes you have to carry people through conversations, and sometimes you have to enact certain skills, and today I didn't have to do any of that. I just showed up, you led the conversation, you asked the questions, you created the space, and you added a lot of value to the conversation with your education and your own expertise, and that was very obvious right away. So kudos to you. 100%, very impressive. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Wow, you said you used the word professional. I'm like, how am I professional in all of this? Yet I need to take that. I need to learn to take that. So thank you very much. Because
You're welcome.
I know there's a tendency to be like, no, no, I'm not that person. But yeah. So if anybody has made it to this point and they would want to find you somewhere to work with you, can you tell us where they can find you?
Absolutely. So I'm relatively searchable online. If you go to YouTube, Burning Bear Podcast is on YouTube. You can contact me through there. We are still, like I mentioned earlier in the podcast, we're still in the development phase of a lot of this stuff. So a lot of this coursework and things like that are actually attached to a website that I'm currently developing. A lot of these services we have been offering kind of like offline. So if anybody
Mhm.
wants to reach out and contact me, you can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram. Just look up the Burning Bear. We have a pretty distinctive logo. If you see the hand, that's us. And, just reach out and send a message if you're interested in any of that other stuff. As we develop the programs and get the coursework out, that stuff will be more available from a landing page. But we're still conceptualizing exactly how we want to do with that. But I do in-person facilitation. So if anybody is out here in the Pacific Northwest in the United States, whether it be California, Oregon, Seattle, I'm definitely within range to be able to sit down and work with you, do one-on-one therapies, do all kinds of different facilitation modalities, from hop A to cannabis to psilocybin. And then I also work with several practitioners in ayahuasca. So, we can get you to Peru, we can get you to Colombia, we can get you to places to be able to sit with the medicine. A good friend of mine, ayahuasquero, Carlos Duran, he is the one that certifies me in all of my work and my programs. He is the one that runs that out of Colombia through Operation Purify. It's a fantastic space. So definitely have the options to be able to help people. So just look me up, find me on one of those platforms, reach out to me, and maybe subscribe to the channel. Maybe my content will be what you like, and that's about it for right now. But as we update and grow through things, I'll definitely get that information put out there for people to be able to find.
Boom! And so we're done. Oh my God. Thank you
That
so
was
much.
three
Thank you
hours
so freaking much.
36. Thank you. I
Wow.
had a blast this morning.
You made it to the end of the episode. Oh my God, congratulations. Also, thank you very much for listening and watching. And if you took anything out of this, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm doing that thing that everybody does. If you have any comments, put them down in the comments. If you have any ideas that crossed your mind when you were watching this, I would be more than happy to read through those. So, in the meantime, thanks for watching. See you next week.